Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
I can hear you, great. Thank you.
All right, thanks everyone, and a fairly full gallery tonight. Welcome along. Welcome one and all to the Planning and Consultation Committee meeting held tonight, Tuesday 16th of July. It's now 7 p.m. Members of the public are advised that the meeting will be live streamed and recorded, and the live stream recording will be made publicly available on YouTube and Council's website. Nillumbik Shire Council respectfully acknowledges the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people as the traditional owners of the country on which Nillumbik is located, and we value the significance of the Wurundjeri people's history as essential to the unique character of the Shire. We pay tribute to all First Nations people living in Nillumbik, give respect to elders past, present and future, and extend that respect to all First Nations people. We respect the enduring strength of the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung and acknowledge that ongoing impacts of past trauma and injustices from colonial invasion, massacres and genocide committed against First Nations people. We acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded. Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people hold a deep and ongoing connection to this place. We value the distinctive place of our First Nations people in both Nillumbik and Australia's identity, from their cultural heritage and care of the land and waterways to their ongoing contributions in many fields, including academia, agriculture, art, economics, law, sport and politics. We've got one apology, and I'll look for a mover. Councillor Eyre, thank you.
Yes, happy to move that the committee, acting under delegation from Council, notes the apology from Councillor Jeff Payne.
Happy to second, Mayor. Councillor Perkins.
Oh, you're getting ahead of yourself.
Sorry.
Yep. Any discussion? We'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest, councillors? We'll move on to the confirmation of the minutes, then looking for a mover and seconder.
Happy to move that, thank you.
Thanks. Councillor Duffy, and a seconder. Councillor
Happy to
Eyre.
second that.
Oh, actually, I'll go back to Councillor Duffy to read out the motion, perhaps.
Yes, thank you. So the motion is that the committee, acting under delegation from Council, confirms the minutes of the Planning and Consultation Committee meeting held on Tuesday the 11th of June 2024, and attachment 1 in the papers reflects those minutes.
Thanks, Councillor Duffy. Councillor Eyre, seconder.
Absolutely.
Do you wish to speak to the item?
No, I won't. That's fine. Thank you.
No discussion, councillors. We'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? It's unanimous. Thank you. First item on the agenda tonight, which I'm chairing basically half the meeting and Councillor Duffy's the other half. I'm dealing with the planning matters. The first item is the draft housing strategy 2024. We'll hear from submitters and outcomes of engagement. So Council has received registration requests from a total of 20 submitters, and we'll listen to them in order of when Council received them. Each submitter will have 3 minutes to speak. And because of the number of the submitters, I'm going to cut you off right at 3 minutes. So there'll be a clock playing. Keep an eye on the clock, but we'll have to pull you up at 3 o'clock, even if it's mid-sentence, unfortunately. The first submitter is Darren Zillick. If you'd like to come forward, if you're here, Darren, and turn your microphone on. There's two buttons on the microphone pedestal there. One's got a looks like a head and a body.
Is it this one?
That's the one. Yep.
Okay. Oh,
Please take a seat.
Good. Makes it easier. Okay. Just go on when I'm ready. Or well, thank the Council for the opportunity to provide some constructive feedback in relation to Nillumbik Housing Strategy 24. I've looked at the proposal on Nillumbik Housing Strategy. Have done so, I strongly disagree with the proposal of substantial housing growth planned for Diamond Creek Central and beyond to Wattle Glen, Panton Hill and St Andrews. Such proposals should only be considered if and when the road infrastructure, accessibility and those regions are in place. The housing proposal fails the accessibility criteria fully. Hence, to add to the housing strategy, I put forward a housing development strategy in Nillumbik that would just tick all the criteria outlined by Nillumbik Housing Design, but would also provide an urgent step to assist with the housing crisis. Currently, under the state proposal, a second dwelling independent persons unit is granted on an existing site, provided criteria plans permits are approved. Such dwelling is limited to only 60 square metres. May I propose that such opportunity in future for a second dwelling on landowners of 2 acres of land or greater is increased to 180 square metres, whilst maintaining the criteria required for the current proposed of 60 square metres. Benefits: housing affordability. Land is already there. Only plans and permits are required, no subdivision. Ease the pressure on housing and rental market. Mental health. As per many medical experts, open space is nature and beneficial for well-being. Ageing in place. Opportunity for elder residents to remain in their land by exchanging accommodation for land management and additional income. Providing support for the family members to save for a housing deposit. Neighbourhood character. Nillumbik is about open space and living in open space. Innovation and sustainable home design. An opportunity for Nillumbik to provide the highest level of sustainable living. You're working with your residents, not with private builders and developers. Accessibility. RCZ zone, wedged between Yan Yin Road and Diamond Creek Road, is the best access to transport in the entire Nillumbik Shire. With the near completion of the North East Ring Road, it is seamless trip to east-west places such as Rosebud, Geelong City. It is the centre of 92-kilometre Melbourne Outer Ring Road. This infrastructure will ensure the safe and quick access for trucks, buses, ambulance, etc. While this is only one region with the potential for proposed above, the opportunity to propose is for all lots above 2 acres. Example, 180 square metres represents only 2% of the entire land site. While the above provides a beneficial list beyond the 6 pillars of Nillumbik housing strategy, I have put this out for a challenge and feedback. I have not received any negative feedback or any concerns, only that it makes too much sense. I'm happy to be challenged.
Thanks, Darren. If you'd like to wait a moment, there might be some questions from councillors.
Sorry, I had to speed up a bit because there's
No,
only
that's
3
fine.
minutes.
You've got 15 seconds to run if you want to say anything else.
I think I've made it clear that the opportunities have to go beyond just what is currently proposed at the moment.
Yep. Good on you. Any questions, councillors? No? Well, thanks very much. Councillor Duffy.
Yeah, thank you very much. I really enjoyed listening to what you were proposing there, and I understand the benefits that you're putting forward. One of the queries that I've got is with the expansion of the second dwelling from 60 square metres to 180 square metres, how many bedrooms do you think that would be able to provide? Have you had a thought of what the dwelling would look like?
It would be the average house, 3 bedrooms, 3 and a study. Yeah, that's roughly about 20 square house.
Thank you.
I mean, you could potentially talk about that in terms of building envelope, or you could talk about, an example, a double-storey building, which might consist of 120 on the land and 60 or 80 metres in the air.
All right, thanks. Councillor Stockman.
Thank you for your submission, Darren. Not sure if you're aware, I'm actually out quite a bit and I get people speaking to me out in a different ward to you out at Blue Lake Ward. And if you can get on, and I'm being told this, onto engage.vic.gov.au, and it looks at what new houses, the number of houses we propose.
Just a question, Councillor Stockman. Yep. Do you have a question?
Yeah, got the question. Are you aware of that website and how many houses are supposed to come? The question I've got is...
I have
Yep.
submitted this to the Engage Vic site, and after I finish here, I will be engaged with Kilkenny from the Planning Minister of State.
The question I've got, though, is if there's only 2 houses per property,
Yep.
the state government might come in and ask for a lot more than that. Like, do you think 2 per property or whatever size you're talking?
That is an initial proposal. I mean, look, we've got places, 30, 40, 50 acres, a bit north from here. And I think to be able to build 3 houses on 50 acres is really, a drop in the ocean. It's not even worth talking about. It's the proposal. We've got a housing crisis, people, that needs to be attended now. It's not going to be fixed by immigration. It's not going to be fixed by allocating some unique pieces of land that need 2 years.
Yeah, Darren, I'm not sure you're answering the question. I think you've already answered the question. It's not an opportunity.
Yeah, I'm saying the opportunities are definitely there for lots that are much bigger than 2 acres, definitely.
Thank you, Darren. Any other questions? Thanks very much for your time, Darren. Appreciate your submission. Next is Stuart Donald. Thanks, Stuart.
Thank you for the opportunity to address Council on behalf of myself and Arthur Corf. I refer to properties along Phipps Crescent, Bishop Avenue, Diamond Creek, more specifically referred to as Area C on the urban fringe of Diamond Creek Major Activity Centre. In 1970, the area was designated as landscape interest, which consists of 43 allotments, 3 of which comply with the 20-acre minimum size, average size being under 5 acres. No strategic planning works were undertaken at that time. Confirmed by, quote, Nillumbik's submission to Melbourne 2030 indicating the location of the urban growth boundary must be altered to reflect identified anomalies and enable implementation of strategic policies. Furthermore, a more robust UGB would be achieved if it was based on sound planning principles rather than drawing arbitrary lines between existing and non-urban lines. The 2 draft zones are far too restrictive. Land use nowadays, more commonly referred to as rural residential. Farming, livestock maintenance are virtually impossible on the urban fringe due to human incursions, conflicts over usage and trespass. Large-scale earthworks, derelict buildings and water reservoir, public utilities, 13-metre high water tank, telecommunications tower, plus outbuildings, together with large tin sheds, dominate much of Phipps Crescent, destroying much of the rural ambience. Roads. Forensic analysis of road material identified toxic elements resulting in a serious illness to myself and others. The Office of the Ombudsman undertook a thorough examination of my health records and Council's actions, resulting upon Phipps Crescent being sealed as a top priority, addressing the numerous complaints. Bishop Avenue, Perversity Avenue, Ellis Lane remain unsealed and pose health hazards to those residents, as dust levels may breach the Local Government Act. Sealing of these roads could and should be addressed as a cost to any development. Our family has been living involved in this area since the early 1900s, spanning 6 generations. I'm familiar with all of the areas spanning from Allendale Road to Perversity Avenue, having completed fire hazard slashing on most of the properties and other works. I welcome the federal and state government's initiative to provide an additional 1.2 million homes. It is important that aspiring young adults be given the opportunity to continue to live in this area with all of the social, family ties and support. The success of the James Cook and Camarookas estates have given young families the opportunity to enjoy this location over past decades. It is now time to open the door and allow the thousands of young adults to continue to live here and continue to take advantage of the abundance of infrastructure and services lying on our doorstep. Given only 3 minutes, I'm very happy to answer any questions.
Thanks very much, Stuart. Any questions, councillors? Councillor Stockman.
Thank you, Stuart, for your submission. You mentioned Area C, so I'm assuming there's an area at A and B. The question I've got first, Area C, did you say there was 43 properties in that area?
Yes.
Okay, and do you have any idea about A and B?
Oh, there were hundreds, but it's all split up. Initially, the map here in dated 1999, 25 years ago, produced by the council, indicates that the urban growth boundary some 25 years ago should include the land north of Phipps Crescent through to Pevesi Avenue. Furthermore, the quotation was concerning the urban growth boundary. It was a submission to Melbourne 2030 put forward by this council acknowledging there were anomalies. With only 3 properties out of the 43 that comply with 20-acre minimums and 2 railway stations, 4 primary schools, shopping centre adjacent to a major activity centre, I think the whole thing is ludicrous.
Well, it wasn't this council, was it, Stuart?
Sorry?
It wasn't this council that made that submission.
We're still Nillumbik.
Yep. For your council, it certainly wasn't this council, nor the one before, nor the one before
Well,
that. But
I would always defer to the expert planning analysis and planners that are employed by this council. I'm just a novice.
no problem. Councillor Stockman, sorry.
Yes, Chair. I don't know if I got my answer answered then, or my question answered. It was, so A, B and C, let's pretend there was 40, well, I'm going to pretend, but if there's 40 properties in each of those A, B and C is 120 properties, are you saying the same thing as Darren before, that you have 2 houses on each property? Because it's not very many houses.
Well, again, if you were to look at proper strategic planning, there is 3 properties of 20 acres, 1 of 15, 1 of 24. So initially, there is 100 acres sitting there. It's urban wasteland. It's can't do anything with it other than maintain parkland. The people living in the townships have gates along their fences to access the properties. We've had huge problems with neighbours who, what do they call it? Field walkers. So they have gates in their properties. I've collected over 150 golf balls. So running stock is useless. Dog attacks on sheep, hopeless.
Okay. So,
Thank
sorry.
you, Stuart. Oh, in terms of your question, a strategic planner might be able to better understand it, but A and B, A is the area been subdivided for, over a decade now. Woodley's property and all that property south of Black Gully Road.
Okay.
Area B is basically the Collate Drive estate, around there. North of Diamond Creek,
Yeah, the question,
inside of the urban growth boundary.
Yeah, the question I'm getting to, and I think the other councillors might have got the same as me, on the engagevic.gov.au website, that does say we have to come up with 12,000 homes in the submission here. So I'm just trying to get whatever numbers we can find. So if I'm trying to put some maths here, 11,880 to go. So I'm just, it's a question that I have to face when I'm out on visiting constituents where we're going to find the houses. So.
Just to clarify that question, just in the last 12 months, quite a nice home in Phipps Crescent, adjacent to Area C. A house was demolished, adjacent to the boundary. Nice house was demolished and they're putting 8 townhouses in there, or alongside open paddocks.
Thank you, Stuart. No other questions, councillors? Councillor Duffy.
Thank you, Stuart, for your submission, and I'd just like to acknowledge the 6 generations that your family has lived here in Nillumbik. That's quite important as well. So you're talking about open the door, and I'm just wanting to make sure that I'm understanding that correctly. You're suggesting that we look to change the urban growth boundary so that we are able to have some of those property, the places that are on the urban fringe reclassified so that there can be development in some of those rural lots that currently are limited to just the one house. Is that correct in my understanding of what you're wanting us to do? And the other part to the question was, I'm unfamiliar with the submission that was made back in 1999, I think you said it was?
Yep.
Is that something that you've got a copy of that you could share with me? And with council, or possibly council might be able to share that with councillors of the current era.
I've got a copy of the map here. You can have that. Just to look at the 6 generations, the property was originally bought around the turn of the century to spell horses because it was in walking distance of Fitzroy where the family had their handsome cabs. today at Silvertop Taxis, run by my wife's 3 nephews. I have 10 grandchildren, and the oldest now have all gone to school in Eltham around there.
All right, Stuart, I'm going to have to pull it up there. Look, you know, these are supposed to be submissions to the draft housing strategy. These are supposed to be questions related to the draft housing strategy. We're going to have to move on. I'm disallowing the question and the answer. We've got 20 submitters tonight. We have to move on. Thanks, Stuart.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Julie Barrington. If you're here, Julie.
I'm speaking on her behalf. She had to stay home with COVID.
Okay, that's fine, Julie.
My name's Roma O'Callaghan. I'm speaking on behalf of Julie.
Okay, could you just say your name again? We're just going to...
Roma
Roma? All right.
O'Callaghan, O''Callaghan.
Oh, Radio Roman, you're speaking on behalf of yourself. Further
right.
on the list, we
Yes.
might get you to speak on behalf of Julie first, and then you can provide your own submission after that. Thank you.
Julie says, my focus is the housing needs of older residents. My first point is a major error in the demographic statistics reported for older residents in the draft strategy. These numbers seriously underestimate the current and projected number of residents aged 55 and over. Consequently, the extent of housing needs of this group is overlooked. The Australian Bureau of Statistics census figures show 31% of Nillumbik residents were aged 55 and over in 2021, 3 years ago. The following population forecast for Nillumbik was released in May 2024 by .id Community, an evidence base for over 250 local government areas in Australia and New Zealand. They say, between 2021 and 2041, the age structure forecasts for Nillumbik Shire indicate a 9.1% decrease in population under working age, a 79.9% increase in population of retirement age, and a 1.3% increase in population of working age. Most of the large and growing group of Nillumbik elders have lived here for decades. They came to be part of the natural environment which they have treasured and nurtured to this day. Close bonds were developed through a long shared history. They supported each other and contributed to building the community through a range of volunteer activities and groups. Many older residents still live in their large family homes which are unsuitable for their current needs. They are unable to move and make way for the next generation of families because of the lack of housing in Nillumbik designed for older people. In order to meet the needs of Nillumbik residents for next 15 years, the housing strategy must include specific actions and policies to address the urgent need for housing the large and growing group of older residents. And I have got the copy of the statistics here, which I'm happy to table from the .id Community, which is an organisation that this council used for its previous housing strategy. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Roma. No, there's no questions. No, but Roma, please take a seat again. We might as well...
Sorry, I'm a bit confused.
We may as well roll into your submission now, and we'll be able to take...
Oh.
You'll be able to answer questions
Okay.
on behalf of yourself.
Fine. So I'm another dreaded downsizer. Please don't say to me, as some have, tough luck, we can't have retirement villages here because it's the green wedge. Go and find a place in Whittlesea or Manningham. I'm one of many people who've lived here for several decades. Many of us have contributed as volunteers, small business owners, founders of service clubs, initiators of environment support groups, and more recently the Men's Shed and the University of the Third Age that keep us learning, being physically active and socially healthy. We want to remain in the community we've built, where our chosen doctors serve and our friends live and recreate. Don't send us into exile. The office's recommendation for this meeting effectively means postpone any actions on housing for up to a year. Even this draft of a housing strategy is bereft of any actions, You may feel you need to postpone formally adopting the housing strategy for obvious reasons, but you can take some action now in preparation for the next version. Accurate statistics and community feedback already demonstrate there is a clear demand now for more housing options for downsizers, and it's growing. Many of us need to leave our large houses and properties, but we will not make the dramatic move from large houses and properties to multi-storey apartments with stairs and no garden. Nor do we want to be forced into renting a 60 square metre granny flat in someone else's backyard. Nor do we have the wherewithal to buy an older home on a quarter acre and pull it down and rebuild what's needed. We can still live in our green wedge by living in smaller homes such as the Future Homes floor plan designed by the Victorian Government architect. We can place them in reasonable proximity with shared green spaces where mutual support helps us both socially and physically. So here's what you can do now without adopting the current draft strategy. 1, direct the officers to include future homes options in the next version of the strategy. 2, support the creation of retirement village cooperatives to develop small clusters of future homes on large blocks of land, keeping the trees. 3, have officers identify suitable blocks of land that can cater for such clusters and begin the work to amend the planning scheme if necessary. And 4, provide incentives for developers to build future homes in small clusters by allowing preferential planning fees and a streamlined planning process. Nillumbik could become admired as an exemplar green community for retirement whose economy thrives on tourism, hospitality, the arts, and jobs for healthy ageing services. Your agenda report says council can only create the right settings for the delivery of housing. So stop procrastinating. I believe Nillumbik Council could and should create the right settings creatively.
Thanks, Roma. Your time is up. If you could stay there, just ask any questions, councillors of Roma. Councillor Stockman.
Thanks, Roma, for your submission. Last year we declared a climate emergency. I do have a question. Everyone.
Well, I hope so.
It was unanimous. It wasn't unanimous. I was the only one who didn't vote for it. But I think we have a housing crisis right now, an emergency. Where do you, and I did listen very much what you just said then, and where do you expect these houses to go? Like, let's say the Future Homes program does happen. Whereabouts in Nillumbik?
I'm focused on Eltham. And some colleagues and I had a brainstorming session, and we were able to identify about 6 properties just in the town of Eltham that are over large, quarter acre and greater, where you could put 3 or 4 future homes on them if the planning arrangements were appropriate. We could help the officers, but we believe that the professional officers of council would be able to identify plenty more.
Any other questions, councillors? No. Well.
Just very quickly, thank you. I really listened to what you had to say, Roma, and thank you for the actions that you put forward. That was really valuable. The Future Homes floor plan program, that's unfamiliar to me, so I would really like to get some more information from you about that, if that's possible.
So happy to send it to Councillor Duffy or to the governance manager and have it distributed.
Yeah, thank you. So that was my question. Could you please send that to
It's
me?
around the idea of having wider corridors and no stairs, no steps,
And so with the
north facing.
with the homes that you're looking to have council consider that design, which makes very good sense for older people, particularly with the statistics that have been put forward as well tonight that we've heard. Do you see that there would be, council should be looking at, if we're going to be having townhouses, rather than townhouses that go up, we have townhouses that go across. So if we're having multi-level development, you know, it's floor by floor rather than 6 places that might be 2 or 3 stories high.
But how can we survive without a garden?
True, yes.
You know, I couldn't move from an acre of garden to a balcony this size. I mean, and I'm not the only one. They're here, you'd know that.
I hear you, yeah, thank you.
Councillor Egan.
Thank you, Councillor Perkins. Thanks, Roma, for both of those submissions. And I was fascinated to hear what you had to say. I actually own a property like that in Shepparton where my mother lives, and it's 1/4 of an acre and there are 4 homes. Each one has its own garden. In fact, they have multiple gardens, about 2 or 3
And
courtyard gardens.
you've got a question as well,
Yes,
Councillor.
I'm getting to my question. You mentioned that you were talking about Eltham. Have you looked at any places in Diamond Creek, and are you happy to stay within the UGB? You don't want to move the UGB?
The UGB is up to council decision, and no, I haven't looked at Diamond Creek.
Right, yeah, well, Councillor Stockman asked the other questions I wanted to know, but thank you for that.
And movement of the UGB is not a council decision, it's very much the state government.
Thank you.
Correct.
Thank you.
Both houses. Thank you. All right, I don't think there's any more questions. Thank you very much, Roma.
Thank you. I'll just hand Councillor Natalie Duffy those amended recommendations, if I may.
Thank you.
Next speaker we have is Anne Nielsen, if you're here, Anne. No? Oh, there we go.
Could I mention that I'm also speaking on behalf of Kathy Armour? Would you like me to do a tag team as with Roma?
Yes. Which one did you want to do first?
Perhaps I'll do Kathy's first.
All right, and we won't be
That's
asking you any questions on Kathy's, but when you follow through to yours, we can ask you
Yes,
questions on
might
yours.
speed
All right,
things up.
thanks very much, Anne.
Thanks. I appreciate the opportunity to respond to the Nillumbik housing strategy and apologise for being unable to attend in person. It was a big ask for feedback on such an important topic, so close to the last neighbourhood character strategy and the urban tree canopy strategy, which were also very important and required a lot of work in order to respond. I recognise that this is a very challenging document to write, but the current format is onerous to read and difficult to understand easily. I am concerned that this format has created barriers, resulting in a lack of the community involvement in the strategy that is much needed. The term muted tones that is included in clause 15.01-2L-01 of the Nillumbik planning scheme, quoted on page 24, is not consistent with the wording in the neighbourhood character strategy, which is earthen and bush tones, particularly greens, browns and greys. Also, it should match the Eltham Gateway document, which refers to earth tones, in order to clearly indicate the required neighbourhood character. I think it is important to keep the language consistent and clear. The whole document should be worded to ensure that the urban tree canopy, neighbourhood character and housing strategies are all integrated. The use of the term small second home could be confusing to those more familiar with the term granny flat, even though this term is also referred to in places. Perhaps small second home could be defined on page 110 to include granny flat, secondary dwelling and independent persons unit. The rules regarding the limited circumstances in which small second homes will require a planning permit are not clear, and this could create misunderstandings. I'm concerned that such development will cause considerable tree canopy loss and extra parking will be needed for the increase of residents in any given street. Although I understand the need for housing that is affordable and suitable for different stages of life, I think that the suburban areas are in need of more green areas that benefit everyone, not only those who live in them. Nillumbik particularly provides and should continue to provide this green area that is accessible for people in other suburbs to enjoy. Increased housing combined with the limitations of the main road and other infrastructure will lead to unreasonable congestion, and we already have an established tree canopy that does not have to be started from scratch. A better way to increase housing is to responsibly develop smaller, affordable housing that leaves as much established tree canopy in place as possible. Our Shire does the heavy lifting for maintaining urban green space and canopy. I don't think we need to be a major player in the housing solution, but Nillumbik can make a contribution by being mindful of suitable building opportunities in the future that don't compromise the Shire's character or the capacity of our restricted infrastructure.
Thanks very much, Anne. If you wanted to take a breather if you like,
Yes,
and
thank you.
when you're ready, roll into your submission.
Okay, right, I'll start now. The housing strategy should ensure that the greater housing density mandated by the state government will be consistent with the community's values, especially because we recently learned that Nillumbik is likely to be required to provide 12,000 new homes by 2051. My submission noted that the strategy contained very few actions that would actively promote the type of sustainable and environmentally sensitive development that the community wants. In particular, the strategy refers to, first, council's influence on housing affordability, build relationships with registered housing organisations and developers, and second, influence of state and federal governments, provide funding to develop demonstration projects within the Shire. The strategy recognises that Nillumbik has an ageing population, but does nothing to satisfy the urgent need for homes that are more suited to those with limited mobility, including the aged. Smaller 1 or 2 bedroom homes are also needed because of the growing population trend towards single-person households. At present, we have examples of blatant market failure to provide smaller, more affordable and environmentally sustainable homes near or within the activity centres. My submission referred to 3-storey townhouses that are unsuitable for an ageing population and plans to build McMansions, all on sites where there is virtually no room for landscaping and canopy trees, thus exacerbating the heat island effect already present in the Eltham Activity Centre. Nillumbik could adopt a strategy where, perhaps using an expression of interest process, it calls for designs for 1 or 2 bedroom homes consistent with the neighbourhood character strategy that will be selected on the basis of what the community wants to be built. Such designs could incorporate modular construction and be capable of fitting into different sites and providing worthwhile open space and landscaping. Planning policies and provisions should facilitate or even mandate the development of smaller homes in areas where they are best located, namely close to facilities and public transport. This would ensure that more people, especially the aged, can live in the areas most suited to their needs, and downsizing would free up the many large family homes that lie beyond the activity centres. If the designs I have already referred to became available and were totally consistent with the Nillumbik planning scheme and generally acceptable to the community, this should incentivise private developers to use them. The use of modular construction should make these cheaper and quicker to build and less prone to the huge number of defects that have been discovered in Victoria's new housing recently, and, owing to community acceptance, less likely to be subject to review at VCAT. Such designs could form the basis of the demonstration projects or relationships with registered housing organisations and developers that I have already mentioned. Hopefully, the next version of the housing strategy can develop a more active way to promote good development in our Shire. Done.
Thanks very much, Anne, and well done. Any questions of Anne, councillors? Councillor Stockman?
Thanks very much, Anne. You mentioned to maintain the neighbourhood character as best as possible.
Yep.
Is there a fear, do you find, that if we don't have a good submission to make it sustainable, as you mentioned, that the state government could come in and just do what they want?
Yes, I think there is. And I know there have been concerns about I'll call them granny flats, because they don't require planning permits. So I saw a particularly horrendous 7:30 report example of things that looked like glorified sheds, which were being proposed as granny flats. And I don't think many of the locals would want that. They want things that look really nice, that are consistent with our community values, and also with landscaping and canopy trees. That's what the community is concerned about.
All right, thank you very much, Anne.
Thanks.
Appreciate your submission. I'll circle back to Stuart Donald. I heard you listed as well, Stuart Donald, on behalf of Arthur Kafatis. No, it's fine. It's all right, covered them both. Thank you very much. Luke Davies is the next.
Evening, councillors. Thank you for your time and also the opportunity to provide feedback on the housing strategy. My submission focused on, I guess, a very small aspect of that. The housing crisis we're currently faced is a multifaceted thing. It's been building for decades, and obviously it's going to take multifaceted approaches to help it get resolved. So when I say it's a small aspect in terms of my submission, that was absolutely pun intended. My focus is on using tiny houses on wheels. So the current challenge at the moment is that they're deemed, caravans and the likes are deemed temporary and only for dependent people to actually use them for a temporary period of time. The challenge that we have then is that there's an opportunity there for the council to consider moving that and actually changing the requirements there that the people can actually live in them permanently. Tiny houses, won't be a solution for everyone, and they won't suit everyone, but there is a population that they will absolutely suit. There are people, in terms of housing affordability, they're about 10% the size of a current Australian home, although Australian homes are the largest homes on average in the world, but the tiny homes only require about 10% of resources. So it was mentioned in terms of we have a climate crisis and a housing crisis at the moment, and so it is a potential solution to help address both. They also use far less running costs in terms of with emissions and output, and many of them can be set up to be run off grid and sustainable. They do allow for people ageing in place, as been previously mentioned in terms of ageing population, people downsizing, perhaps generational home, allowing people to continue to live on the property. The other aspect is that also it allows an opportunity for people to afford housing who might be in terms of vulnerable people in our society, people fleeing domestic violence, people in terms of divorce, separation, particularly for those later in life that don't have the means to be able to pay for a granny flat or something of that nature. Tiny houses, whilst they vary in cost to build, they do kind of fluctuate from those at around $30,000, $40,000 to those $150,000, depending on appetite. One of the ways in which this can be addressed is that there's a couple of councils in Victoria who have taken a different approach. The Mount Alexander Council has decided their view. They took a decision in June 23 that they no longer required a permit for those living in a house on wheels. They do require that it is a second dwelling, so therefore it's helping address the aspects of bushfire and flood management, as well as environmental impact and access that has already been addressed. Surf Coast Shire is also conducting a pilot program, a similar sort of approach to allow people up until now, until 2026, to address, to give people an opportunity to have a mobile home on wheels within an existing dwelling. One of the things that it's kind of impressed upon me, I was at a rental inspection today that had to be extended out its time because it had over 30 people applying for a very modest home in Eltham. Whilst I appreciate that there is the appetite for the Victorian government to look at 12,000 houses in the area, the housing crisis is here today, and so this just represents...
Sorry, Luke, as promised, I'll have to cut you off.
Thank you very much.
But there might be some questions. Councillors, any questions for Luke? Councillor Stockton.
No, thanks, Chair. Luke, you mentioned this, and obviously housing crisis, something that we take very seriously too, like the state government. You mentioned that there is a housing crisis here today. Just wanted to ask you, whereabouts would these tiny homes go, do you think?
So that's the beauty of them. They offer a great deal of flexibility in terms of houses the size they can be. Council can, of course, look at requirements in terms of meterages from fences and so forth, which has been done in similar states. And so that offers a degree of flexibility of when they can be placed. Notwithstanding there obviously be put some requirements in place for in terms of overall size of property for that to be put positioned. At the moment, it's a lot of don't ask, don't tell. So they would be happy at the moment, but it's a lot of unofficially, which doesn't allow that sort of confidency, permanency for the individuals living in them.
Councillor Duffy.
Thank you for your submission, Luke. My question is for council to consider this seriously, to have tiny houses on wheels looking to be more permanent in our shire. What would we do with water, sewage and heating so that these places are actually livable for the people that live in them for the permanency that you're suggesting?
Yeah, so the challenge that comes into then is, I guess, the approach being taken by the Mount Alexander was to have an existing dwelling, to whether or not the house taps into mains as well as uses treatment on site. But also it does create the opportunity to create a lot more lateral thinking in terms of the treatment of waste, so compostable toilets and the likes. But also the fact that they actually use far less energy because of their sheer size, so the use of solar on-site thing actually makes them quite then approachable. But no doubt council would need to look at both to make sure that there's an adequate treatment of wastage.
Thank you very much, Luke. I don't see any other hands going up, so thank you for your submission. Next, we've got the President of the Friends of Nillumbik, Don Vincent, speaking on behalf of the Friends of Nillumbik.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of the Friends of Nillumbik, a community-based organisation that advocates for environmental sustainability and to preserve and enhance the green wedge. We understand and support the vision and intent of the strategy, including its aims to balance growth and change, maintain our distinctive neighbourhood character and align with the Climate Action Plan. Our strongly held view, supported by the strategy, is that the strategy must only apply to land which is within the urban growth boundary, including the townships, plus the currently low-density residentially zoned land in Plenty and Yarrambat. The green wedge zones should never be considered for further subdivision or higher density residential development. They must be preserved because of their contribution as the lungs of Melbourne for their biodiversity and the natural environment of value to all across Melbourne. Our major concern, however, is whether this housing strategy is effectively redundant, given that the state government's housing targets ask council to meet a draft target of 12,000 new homes by 2051 compared to the strategy's plan of 2,540 homes by 2036. It will necessarily mean increased housing density, redevelopment of major activity centres, increased height limits and more second dwellings than envisaged in this housing strategy. The timeframe for having new housing targets agreed and formalised by the end of August in this council's term is mind-blowingly fast. We have to ask, what is council's view on these targets? Do you intend to seek a lower target or comply with the state's request? How do you intend to engage with the community rather than being forced into targets that will negate the substantial planning work up to this point? Given the scale of this change, we consider a collaborative, innovative, pragmatic and reasoned approach will be necessary to achieve increased housing targets without compromising the green wedge or the recently adopted neighbourhood character strategy. Affordable housing, housing diversity to suit different households and accessibility, and housing for First Nations peoples must be priorities. The necessity for council to retain and protect its own reserves as buffers is also important. Consideration of higher living densities within these constraints and ecologically sustainable development principles is not conducive to redevelopment on a piecemeal lot-by-lot basis. This will require extensive community engagement and careful urban planning. Active council intervention may also be necessary on such things as lot consolidation and site planning. Finally, housing targets must not be met without the necessary education and health facilities, transport infrastructure and public transport. Those who gain financial windfalls from redevelopment should bear an appropriate portion of the significant cost of this infrastructure. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Don. Any questions of Don, councillors? Councillor Stockman.
Thanks, Chair. Don, I've got a question that someone before said 1.25 million homes around Australia, 12,000 in Nillumbik. I work outside of Nillumbik and a lot of people say that we're a little greedy. You go to Mitchellshire, they've got to come up with, I think, 80,000 or 88,000 homes. So it's a lot more than we've got and they're a lot further out with probably less facilities. The question is, what do you think about those people that say we're a bit greedy in Nillumbik?
I think the issue is that the green wedges need to be preserved. They're put there for a purpose so that the corridors of growth occur, but there's those green wedges so that they're accessible right to central Melbourne. The target that's here for Nillumbik is similar to the target for Macedon Ranges. And the state government's own targets say that 70% of new homes should go into existing areas and 30% into the growth corridors, which have been well established already and operating for years.
Thanks, Don. Just a follow-on question, but you wouldn't refute the claim that there are greedy people in Nillumbik?
Sorry, you said greedy people?
Yeah, that was a question from Councillor Stockman, the accusation that Nillumbik is greedy, but I wonder what your thoughts are on the notion of greedy people living in Nillumbik.
No, I don't think that's the point. The point is that, Nillumbik's already 30% state parks. It's set out as a green area and set out with a purpose. We don't destroy our parks and our natural areas, and it's set there as a green wedge. So I don't think it's greedy for residents that are here. It's part of the whole landscape of Melbourne, really.
Was that Councillor Stockman?
Yeah, and just to clarify that question a little bit, is that, it's how people perceive, perhaps we're greedy, and some people say that we land bank here in Nillumbik. When I first got on council, people are, from other shires are saying that we land bank and all this sort of stuff. So,
any other questions, councillors?
No question, but I just have to say I
Well,
disagree.
the whole point
with
is
those
question
comments.
time. So yep. If there's no other questions, thank you very much, Don. Next is Carlotta Quinlan.
Evening, everyone. I'm speaking on behalf of Eltham Community Action Group too, so shall I do that first? Yep, right. Eltham Community Action Groups is aware that this draft housing strategy may be affected by the government's new housing targets and that there may be the need for further consultation in 25 regarding any required changes. As Council intended the neighbourhood character strategy and the housing strategy to be developed and implemented in tandem so as to dovetail, we're concerned that the government may also put pressure for changes to the neighbourhood character strategy in order to accommodate the increased housing targets. ECAG trusts that Council will mount a strong case against that scenario and advocate for retaining the various aspects of Nillumbik's character that make the use of the government's one-size-fits-all housing template inappropriate for Eltham and the whole of Nillumbik. ECAG committee did read the whole 143-page document. It was a challenge, and we'd suggest not many in the community would have persevered. The detailed information included is important. However, to encourage more residents to give a considered opinion, it'd be worthwhile for a second summary document to be developed that was less wordy and more accessible to the community as regards immediate and medium to long-term effects of the strategy. The success of the strategy involves implementing goals, objectives and actions, all requiring funding, but the strategy gives no information as to when or how this funding would become available. There are specific points in the draft with which we have concerns, one being on page 58, which deals with co-housing. A description of this diverse housing typology should be sufficient. The inclusion of an article, photograph and direct link to the website of an organisation of individuals dedicated to promoting co-housing and information as to how to join the group is inappropriate for a Shire housing strategy. The comments regarding muted tones on page 24 are not specific enough. Colours and materials are an important part of Nillumbik's housing stock, and the lack of specificity in development plans causes much angst at VCAT. To give consistency between policy documents, the housing strategy should include the wording and definition as is included in the neighbourhood character strategy. The use of occasional, as in the occasional duplex and dual occupancies in minimal change areas. There's no definition of occasional in the strategy. When does occasional become the norm? Is occasional 1 in 10, less than half? Do the planners look at a map of the area before granting or refusing a permit? Is it occasional per street or per precinct? And will the VCAT member interpret occasional in the
Sorry,
same
Carlotta,
way?
you've run out of time and I was listening so intently I gave you an extra 17 seconds, so I'm going to have to cut you off right there. We'll ask any questions of Eltham Community Action Group councillors.
I have a question.
Councillor Duffy.
Just what's the appetite for co-housing by the group, Carlotta?
As I said, it's one type of housing that is appropriate for some people on some areas. So obviously, yes, where the co-housing is built is of importance, and how it's situated, how it's developed. So yes, no problem. I guess with everything, the right place and the right development is appropriate.
No other questions, councillors? Thank you very much, Carlotta. Now you've got your own submission, if you'd like to speak to that.
Right. Well, I guess as the committee put in the ECAG submission, and as part of the committee, my thoughts, and I would endorse what was said there, and so what I will say as myself was the ideas were in the ECAG submission as well, as I was part of the committee who wrote that. So the last sentence from the first one was, the language needs to be tighter. So, from me, much of the strategy consists of high-level statements that most would agree with. However, most residents would go to the property search function and then straight to the survey without reading the daunting document. A response to the survey, suggested as being 4 to 5 minutes, was fairly meaningless after reading the whole document. And without having read it, the response could be nothing more than superficial. The lack of a question suggesting a response to the change area in which a property is situated indicated that this was a fait accompli and no consultation allowed. As an example of the inappropriate use of the one-size-fits-all template when it comes to Nillumbik, there are areas within the designated incremental zone in Eltham that need special treatment and maybe should even be moved to minimal zone. These include the historic, heavily treed and steep Harcourt Hill area across the creek from the sports grounds, and the narrow streets between Bible and Main Road, Napoleon, Franklin, York and John, all of which have no footpaths. Both areas are unsuitable for the type of housing suggested for incremental areas. Page 45, the strategy needs to differentiate between, 85, sorry, what's permitted in the commercial precinct and the residential precinct of the ACZ. The comment about max structure plans and the future of aged care facilities needs clarification. The suggestion that opening up a larger area than is required to satisfy demand for medium density development will lessen the impact on neighbourhood character is debatable. It's quite possible that it would have the opposite effect and that a far larger area than is necessary would lose tree canopy and character. The government requirement for more housing must be balanced with the need and desire to retain neighbourhood character. Tree canopy is our neighbourhood character, and a single dwelling cannot be replaced by 2, 4 or 5 without losing canopy and character. This is an urgent challenge that Council must deal with now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carlotta. Any questions, councillors, of Carlotta?
Thank you.
No, thanks very much. The next is Sue Dyatt. Thanks, Sue.
As Carlotta said, when you've got a committee working on a document, there will be some echoes in here. My personal submission. I'm going to back. This document will be the one that Council will rely on to give weight to any discussions with the state government regarding the state's proposed increase in housing numbers in Nillumbik. There does need to be another version. The ground has significantly changed. The language throughout the final document should be as clear and as definite as possible, while still being readable to the general public. This is where the draft falls down. It's far too lengthy for general reading. Whilst the content is either important or interesting, it requires a committed person or a planner to plough through the whole document. It appears that a high proportion of the people who submitted on Participate Nillumbik ticked the box to say that they had read the document. I have my doubts that that is a totally reliable. As someone who had said something that they wanted to say would say yes, in case saying no prevented them from going further into the process, and they would not be able to express their opinion, or that it would be discouraged or discounted. There were 103 responses, 10 from the survey, 11 written using Participate Nillumbik and 12 outside. This number could be compared with the number of responses to the Nillumbik neighbourhood character strategy. The initial response there to the neighbourhood character review and not using a survey was 332 responses. The responses to the second draft was 107 and to a final was 16, as by then people would have thought that council would have known what they were thinking. I wonder if Participate Nillumbik is the only way to canvass opinion. An age reader said, "What is measured is not often what is of most value, and the questions asked in surveys are not often the questions which need to be addressed." I am concerned also about in a council document on page 58, a whole page of information plus photo that has been lifted in its entirety from the website of an organisation that is currently aiming to build a housing development is included. No matter how good or the concept or development process behind that development, council could be perceived as supporting the development type over others, or even advertising as the concept, if this page remains in the final document. A page written by council officers describing a range of alternative housing options or developments could include proposed cooperative housings as one option, but to give just one option such prominence is, to say the least, unusual.
Sorry, Sue, but there might be some questions. Any questions of Sue, councillors? Sorry, there's no questions, Sue. We appreciate your submission.
The evening is going on.
The next speaker or submitter is Andrew Lemon. Andrew, you're also listed as speaking on behalf of downsizing in Nillumbik as the chair. You can do it whatever order you like, yourself or as chair, either one.
Thanks. We might start as downsizing in Nillumbik, and I'll take my hat off. Well, thank you for the opportunity. I speak on behalf of the group called Downsizing in Nillumbik, inaugurated last year. Our purpose is to highlight and acknowledge need within the broader housing crisis. Where do our ageing residents go if the time comes to leave their family home, but they still want to live in Nillumbik? Widely acknowledged, but put straight into the too hard basket. Too often the response is, what can we do? Not a council responsibility, the market rules. Now, the Nillumbik housing strategy has to be postponed to come to grips with the state government's housing targets that imply 4 times as many new dwellings, but the problem has not been postponed. Nillumbik has an ageing population. The proportion is growing annually, understated in the strategy. The housing stock being built does not meet this demographic reality. An effective downsizing strategy benefits us all. Long-term residents can remain here, healthier and happier, while freeing existing homes for younger families. I'm talking about that stage of life euphemistically called ageing in place. The best incentive for downsizing is a supply of appropriate alternatives. In today's Nillumbik, urban and rural, such options are too few. By contrast with adjacent municipalities, we have few retirement villages, few aged care options and few single-level residences. Developers squeeze multi-storey units onto blitzed blocks. Your draft strategy combines ageing in place with housing diversity as one of 5 key themes. The strategy pays homage to downsizing in principle, yet strategies need actions. The sole recommended action, medium priority, is more planning to prepare a local, I'm quoting, a local planning scheme policy for affordable housing, including the investigation of community need for aged care and retirement villages. The time to investigate, advocate and act is now. The DIN submission summarises the benefits to all when we retain downsizing residents in Nillumbik. We don't have all the answers. We urge a council task force connected with state and federal representatives and with local knowledge. It would establish a better understanding of Nillumbik's existing housing stock. We're not keen on commercial retirement villages of the sort in the current news. a task force could identify suitable land and model and facilitate not-for-profit projects, such as the Warrandyte Community Housing Scheme described in our submission. If the council is spooked by the state's demand for additional housing in the Shire, it must see that smaller homes suitable for the aged, including small retirement villages or co-ops, will help meet those targets with less impact on neighbourhood and environment. So that's my statement on behalf of the downsizing group.
Thank you, Andrew. Any questions of Andrew? Councillor Eyre.
Thank you, Andrew. I just wanted to ask a bit about, I've just gone blank, downsizing in Nillumbik. Can you tell me how that started and how many members you have, please?
Yes, it's a very small group. It was inspired by Julie Barrington, who Roma spoke on her behalf today, and I know she's spoken to many people about her concerns about it. She convened a meeting of people who she thought might be interested in that and framing this as a problem. So it's really a think group. We're an unincorporated body. We have no politics. All we're doing is trying to brainstorm an issue, which there is a big housing crisis. I have to say, as a historian, there has always been a housing crisis in Victoria since the first non-Indigenous people arrived in this place. There's been a housing crisis. So we're aware of that, but this is a specific problem that we're trying to focus on as part of the housing strategy.
Thank you.
Councillor Duffy.
Thank you very much, Andrew, for your initiative with downsizing in Nillumbik and what you've put forward tonight. One of the questions, well, the question that I've got is, we're talking about all these numbers of dwellings, numbers of houses, but in downsizing in Nillumbik, have you considered the idea of a collective of people who are all wanting the same thing? They're wanting to stay in the area, they're wanting to have independence, but looking at the possibility of a home that's got shared lounge room, shared laundry, but you've all got separate living spaces, separate bedrooms and things like that. So effectively you could have 5 homes or 5 houses, but you've got it in one dwelling. So it's looking at creatively how can we fit in the numbers that the state government are wanting us to do, and have you kind of worked out something like that in what works with the people that you've been talking to as how they want to live? Do they want to live independently, alone, or are they okay to live collectively with some others?
What I'm finding is that they're Nillumbik residents, so they've all got their own different opinions, but they are open to a number of different ideas, and that sort of idea, I think it was tried out at Montalvat a few years ago, living in a shared communal housing. So I think people are open to those sorts of ideas. The Warrandyte model I'm talking about is a version of that, with 5 or 6 houses which have a small communal area but are designed for aged people specifically, but certainly we're open to that. So really, as I say, we don't have the answers. I know we're not expecting council to have all the answers, but we do think council should really pick up this topic and work with it.
Thank you.
Councillor Stockman.
Andrew, was it? Andrew?
Yep.
Andrew, just on behalf of downsizing in Nillumbik, where it's a big diverse place, Nillumbik. Where are most of your members happy to live, and what parts?
They're very happy to live in Nillumbik. I think one of the things we're looking at, acronyms. There are a lot of acronyms in the housing report, and we decided downsizing in Eltham were not very good initials. So we thought downsizing in Nillumbik works better. We're very aware of the potential in the townships and some of the areas outside Eltham to have these kinds of smaller developments that we're talking about. So yes.
Andrew, I think I know the answer to this question, but I suppose for a lot of people downsizing might mean residential apartments. Has your group discussed the possibility or the suitability of residential apartments in major activity centres?
Yes, we have looked at that, because what we've seen is so many of the townhouse developments are, as Roma Callaghan said, 2 up, 2 down, not suitable for the person who can't get up and down stairs. There is options for developments which allow people to be on a ground floor to have access to a small garden or access around that. So we're not opposed to that concept in the right place.
Or how about people in upper stories? Lifts are provided and full disability access.
We don't really think Nillumbik should be Brunswick or Preston or Fitzroy, and so the high density housing, which is appropriate to more inner city areas, we find less appropriate to this area. But we do accept that there may be cases where that sort of opportunity for aged people to have access to a ground floor flat and perhaps have upper floors that are available for other people could be a solution.
Thank you, Andrew. Councillor Ramcharan.
Thank you, Councillor Perkins. Thanks, Andrew. Just to pick up on something you said just before around housing density and that, you don't want to see the kind of density that we've got in areas like Brunswick. And I think a lot of people would agree with you on that. But when we're looking at the amount of housing that we're going to need to build, not just under the state government's housing targets, but if we are going to house people who are wanting to downsize and the large level of demand that we are likely to see for that, the amount of houses that we're going to have to actually build to cope with that demand, can you see any way other than having that level of density? Do we really have the space to fit that many new small dwellings with gardens unless we do have multi-storey apartments?
The 12,000 number is pretty scary compared with the 2,500 number, and certainly our original thinking from the strategy was based on those original figures. We're very also aware that we deal with topography in Nillumbik, so a lot of Melbourne is flat. I think we do need to look at the impact of anything that's more than 2 or 3 levels has a negative impact on neighbouring properties in a way that is less the case in other areas. So I think it is an issue, but in our area that is a problem that has to be faced. And the other issue which I'll mention in my other discussion is the question of what roadways and so on are actually suitable, what the topography demands. So in other words, we need to think in Nillumbik terms about this future housing. We can't just import a model that everybody else uses.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Andrew. I'll ask you to go on to your own submission now and then there'll be opportunity for questions after that.
Okay, well, I have read the draft strategy, all 143 pages, and I have looked at the summary of community responses online. My submission was the text of a talk I gave in May to Nillumbik U3A, specifically reviewing the strategy and looking at what solutions it had to offer to the challenges of downsizing and ageing in place. The strategy identifies conflicting aspirations in a shire that's expected to provide additional housing, and yet, and this is an overriding sentiment, I think, in Nillumbik, it must protect its green wedge and even within the urban areas must protect its natural environment. The strategy mentions that our shire is bushfire prone. That point surely has not been front of mind with the current government push to increase significantly the number of houses in our shire. Exactly what happens when, and surely it is when, not if, the next catastrophic bushfire threatens the shire of Nillumbik. Part of my submission was a lament that in council town planning, which has the services of professionally trained planners, too little attention is paid to the history of the shire and the sequence of housing types and development. And there's little discussion of the fire history. If ever councils consider history, they rely on unpaid volunteers who keep our historical societies alive. Corporate memory in all local councils suffers from dementia. In the mythical good or bad old days, shire councillors were rusted on. Councillor Perkins, you have not rusted on. Town clerks grew wise and ancients in their jobs. Shire officers remembered why and when things were done. All planning should be grounded in a properly researched understanding of where we are and how we got here. And it's not selfish to value the things that make our area distinctive before we make changes. My plea is for a housing strategy tailored to the practical realities of this shire. The proposed zoned areas need more nuance. In Eltham, some streets and precincts, even those within 800 metres of the station, are not suited for even medium-rise buildings. There are historical and geographical reasons for this. The strategy acknowledges the need for innovative and sustainable design. That design must be right for this shire. The housing strategy has no hard data on how many single-storey units or smaller houses exist on smaller blocks that are or could be made suitable for independent ageing. Does the housing stock reflect what potential downsizers in Nillumbik really want? We need to know, and then we work to meet the downfall. In my submission, echoed in the downsizing in Nillumbik submission, I briefly explain and commend the Warrandyte community model for small to medium-sized, not-for-profit retirement housing, closely integrated into residential neighbourhoods. And finally, it's bizarre to me that 70 years ago, the Judge Book homes could be built in Eltham as a charitable community project, but today those independent living units have gone with nothing to replace them. We can and should do better in Nillumbik. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Questions of Andrew, councillors? Councillor Duffy.
Andrew, you've mentioned Judge Book and the independent living units that were demolished there recently. That is an organisation that's chosen to do that. If there is an opportunity, what would you like to see happen there?
Well, it's a fascinating history. Don't get me on the history, but of course it started off as a Methodist institution, and it's a Catholic institution. The independent units were demolished partly because of the flood risk and flood area. I believe there's 10 acres sitting there very close to the Eltham railway station that could still, with proper architectural engineering, designing, making sure culverts don't get blocked up in hailstorms like in 2011, that it could be again become a really good retirement village area under those sort of auspices. I think that you could get quite a lot of, you're not going to get 12,000 people in there, but you could get quite a few there. I'd love to see something ingenious come up with that site.
Andrew, just a quick question from myself. Coming from someone who's the longest serving councillor in Nillumbik, fourth council term, into my 15th year now, what would it take for me to be considered as rusted on?
Well, you probably...
Relevant to the issue, but seriously.
It was a statement in the submission. I'm asking a question of the submitter about his submission.
Yeah, rusted on. Some councillors, of course, would go for a lifetime from the age 20 till they finally went out in the wooden box. So you might have to stay a bit longer.
Well,
that's up to your constituents, I think.
Yes, I'm more than happy to. Thank you, Andrew.
Okay.
Thanks for the kind invitation and the submission. Next we have Graham Fildes. I hope I've said your surname right, Graham.
Fields.
Or Files.
Graham Fields. Thanks, Graham.
I'll answer to most things. Thank you. Good evening. Whilst I support the general thrust of the draft housing strategy, it's concerning that it won't immediately come to fruition due to the recently announced state government's housing targets. Obviously, a new draft housing strategy is needed, hopefully available early next year. The state government's plans will test the strength and all thoughts around the adopted 2023 neighbourhood character strategy. The current draft housing strategy references the 2021 Nillumbik Community Vision, outlining expectations for 2040. This will need to be completely reworked. Interestingly, it indicated that by 2036, an average of an additional 250 dwellings a year would be necessary. This figure would need to be nearly doubled at 460 additional dwellings per year if the state's target is to be realised. This is a very large number indeed. A note in the 2040 vision document indicated that by 2036, almost a quarter of Nillumbik residents will be aged 65 years and older. However, the 2021 census showed that already nearly a third of the population are 55 and over. So it needs revisioning fairly quickly. Currently 94% of existing dwellings in Nillumbik are detached homes. An increase in the diversity of housing in Nillumbik will certainly be required to meet future needs. Regarding downsizing in the draft housing strategy, an objective of Goal 1 is to support older people to age in place, but the actions proposed seem to be just to facilitate the Seniors Housing Forum, to provide information about downsizing, accessing services and finances, etc. I'd suggest as a minimum that a Shire-wide survey of residents' wants and needs is also necessary. Small single-storey homes with small gardens could be as popular for some as apartment living would be for others. A broad diversity will be required, not necessarily in major activity centres, of course. Regarding Goal 2, supporting the neighbourhood character objective, this requires strengthening the necessity and inclusion for enhanced compliance activity, especially regarding form, colour and materials, and general adherence to the planning scheme. Page 68 indicates that in the LGAs studied, 40% of potential downsizers said that they would be likely to move if there was suitable housing in their preferred locations. Only 22% stay in their original neighbourhood. If that 22% could be improved, local residents could then continue to contribute rather than leave. Thank you.
Thank you, Graham. Any questions of Graham, councillors? Thanks for your submission, Graham. Next, we have the President of Eltham District Historical Society, Jim Connor, speaking on behalf of Eltham District Historical Society.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to present tonight on this item. As Councillor Perkins said, I'm speaking as President of the Eltham District Historical Society. We are supportive of the provision of increased housing across the Shire, including the provision of accessible housing to support and retain our ageing residents. We are conscious we are going through a period of unprecedented housing challenges driven by housing supply and affordability issues. We are concerned if pressures to provide higher levels of housing challenges and undermines the retention of heritage-related properties. Council is responsible for protecting places with local heritage significance, and the Planning and Environment Act obliges Council to use the planning schemes to conserve and enhance buildings, areas or other places of local heritage significance. The recent Shire-wide Heritage Review has defined heritage places to be protected by the provision of interim or permanent heritage overlays. Until such properties are formally gazetted, there is a risk the heritage significance of such properties may not generally be recognised, which may place such properties at risk. We ask Council to consider models that are respectful of our local heritage, a unique neighbourhood character and valuable environments. This, of course, all depends on the state government actions as a result of the current process we're going through. But with this process, history should not be overlooked. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Jim. Any questions of Jim?
Beauty.
Nope. Well done. Thank you. Councillor Egan's still with us. She's lost power and working off her phone, so in the dark. Not only
yes, sorry about that.
That's actually all the submitters. Yeah. Oh, actually, unless we've got anyone on Zoom, I'll just check. No, there's a couple of people listed potentially coming on Zoom, but there's been no appearance. Yeah, you can table it. Yep.
May we ask who it's from?
Perhaps when you get the microphone, you can just tell us who the submission's from.
The submission was from Rosemary Aitken.
Okay. Yep. No worries. Yep.
It'll take a minute and a half to read if you'd like me to.
Well, there's no opportunity to. It wasn't registered on time, I understand, and if there's some evidence that it was, it could be read. But happy to table it. I'll look for. That's all the submitters, councillors. I'll look for a motion.
I'm happy to move that. Thank you.
All right. I'll give you the opportunity to So you're moving,
Moving the housing
yeah, the officer recommendation plus the addition.
plus an amendment at the end, yep.
Did you want to read out the addition as it's not in the papers?
Yep, thank you, I will. So are we able to put up the front page, please? So I'll read the whole recommendation very quickly, that the committee acting under delegation from council firstly notes the community responses and feedback to the draft housing strategy, the written and verbal submissions. Secondly, that council resolves that the confidential unredacted copies of submissions to engagement on the draft housing strategy as provided in attachment 3 remain confidential as per the Local Government Act. 3, notes officers will bring submissions to a draft plan for Victoria and housing targets to the August council meeting for consideration and adoption to submit to state government by the 31st of August submission deadline. Fourthly, makes copies of attachment 1, draft housing strategy 2024 outcomes of community engagement report, and attachment 4, draft housing strategy community reference groups outcome, available on the Participate Nillumbik website. 5, that council writes to all respondents to the community engagement to express council's gratitude for their contribution and to advise them of the council's resolution and the next steps in the project. And then lastly, an addition that we've made tonight is that council notes the draft housing strategy will remain on hold pending the release of the Victorian State Government's final housing targets, programmed for release in late 2024.
Thank you, Councillor Duffy. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Tran. Councillor Duffy.
Thank you very much, Councillor Perkins. Tonight's been a very, it's been a great night to be here as a councillor, to have so many people engaged and wanting to give their feedback so that we can listen and improve the housing strategy. The development of the housing strategy and a new neighbourhood character strategy have been priorities of this council. We've heard from the community about the importance of protecting Nillumbik's unique neighbourhood character and working with the community to develop the new strategy, which will be including environment, colours, building types, the look and feel of these houses to come, so that it fits into the neighbourhoods that we love. This housing strategy comes at the time when we are facing a housing crisis. Across the country, people are experiencing difficulty finding homes they can buy or rent or stay living in as prices skyrocket. We see across the country and in Nillumbik community desire for the need for more housing, more affordable homes, diverse housing that ebbs and flows with the stages of life. And we've heard that tonight loud and clear. Housing that supports young families, individuals, empty nesters, which we will refer to as ageing in place and downsizing. Thank you, Andrew. Housing for workers. We hear a focus on housing numbers, but what it is we want houses that fit the needs and the lives that we want to live. Recently, I attended the National General Assembly of Councils, a gathering in Canberra with over 500 local councils attending. And I was able to advocate to the Assembly and to the federal government the need for attention not just on housing numbers and a focus on numbers, but on design principles that help alleviate the loneliness epidemic that our country is facing as well, where 1 in 3 people express feelings of loneliness. So having increased number of housing is one thing, but having housing that works so that we can have quality lives is another. In our Nillumbik housing strategy, we want to ensure that not just the number of houses, but the type of housing developments we encourage will provide improvements to quality of life and enable us to continue to enjoy the special aspects of living in the Green Wedge Shire. Already, a quarter of the population is over 60, as we've heard some of the statistics from people here tonight. We had 103 submissions, which was great. We've had a number of people speak compassionately here tonight. The community wants housing that's environmentally and sustainably aligned with community views, and homes that are suitable for single living homes and ageing into the future. So I'd just like to again thank everybody for coming tonight and for sharing your views so that we can hear that and so that that can assist us in putting forward a great housing strategy for into the future, and also our conversations with the state government so that we can meet targets that are realistic and we can do the best that we can do here in Nillumbik to provide as many homes for the people that need them.
Thanks, Councillor Duffy. Councillor Amtran.
Yes, thank you. And I'd just like to thank everyone for coming in today. It's not often that we see the gallery this full, so it really is a wonderful thing to see. I think a few real key messages have shone through today. We've obviously heard a lot about downsizing and the need for not just smaller homes, but housing diversity in general, so that there's an appropriate place to live for everyone. We've heard about the importance of protecting Nillumbik's urban growth boundary, and I think that's something that we can all agree on. There are obviously some people who want it to move slightly around the edges, but that is a state government decision, and under state legislation, it's a hard boundary, and it won't move. And so this strategy needs to work within the urban growth boundary, within what we've got, the land that is appropriate for development, and that really is what it focuses on. We've also heard about neighbourhood character and the importance of protecting the precious neighbourhood character that we have here in Nillumbik that is so unique in Melbourne, so unlike anywhere else, particularly in regards to our tree canopy. And the real genuine fear that a vast increase in housing will put our tree canopy at threat. And that is a significant concern. And that's why we have these documents. By having our neighbourhood character strategy, by having our housing strategy, we can plan for that future growth in a way that is sustainable and that enables us to grow and not just build more homes, but build the right homes while also protecting what we've got. And I was quite upset as I reread the strategy last week in preparation for tonight's meeting, quite upset thinking how good it is and how well the team's done. And just to thank the team for the wonderful work that they've put into it and the fact that we now have to push it back and wait for state government targets that are not very well thought through, that are not only going to delay this, but possibly see us have to make quite significant changes to it. It's quite disappointing. But we will make a submission to the state government's housing targets, and we will continue to try and protect what we've got here in the Green Wedge Shire, because it really is absolutely crucial. We will see growth, we will see change. Things can't stay the same forever, and particularly in our urban areas, particularly close to services, particularly close to the rail line and train stations, we are going to see new developments, new housing. There is going to be growth. It has to happen. Our job is to make sure that it's appropriate and that it doesn't leave a scar on what Nillumbik is and the real key fundamental parts of Nillumbik, such as our neighbourhood character and our tree canopy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Entrin. Councillor Egan.
Thank you, Councillor Perkins. Sorry about that blackout. I think what's overwhelmingly clear, first let me thank everybody for their submissions tonight, but what's overwhelmingly clear to me is that I think nearly everybody's on the same page about a number of things, and that is that we don't want our green wedge to change. Number two, that we're desperately in need of different housing options for ageing in place, or whatever you want to call that, for the elder residents such as myself who want to downsize. And that there are options that out of the box a little bit that we can look at. I'm familiar with the development in Warrandyte. In fact, I think they've now got two, and Councillor Perkins may remember having a visit there as well last term. And it's a great model. I think we're all in agreement that we don't want to touch the green wedge areas either. So we do need to revisit this, and it's unfortunately not of our doing. And I think, Andrew, you are particularly spot on when you say that they haven't taken our fire risk into account either in terms of the state government and the numbers they've given us. I don't think we should be going up either, but we do have to do something. And I think if you put all of the submissions together tonight, I think we could come up with something. But unfortunately, the staff are going to have to rework this, which is, going to hit us in the pocket as well. So thank you again for all your submissions. It's great to see that everybody really wants to make some changes and try and do something about this and work together. So thank you again.
Thank you, Councillor Egan. Any other councillor wishing? Councillor Eyre?
Thank you, Councillor Perkins. Thank you again to all who have submitted and attended this evening. It's great to hear the passion and the dedication behind the need for diverse housing options. And most who live in the Shire, whether you're young or older, know about the downsizing issues. You will have met someone, you will have come across it, whether it be your parents or your grandparents. There's someone that you would know that has probably had to move out of the Shire. And we see so many empty nesters unable to move out of large houses to make way for younger families or large families, which is an issue as well. So we can't invite new members to our community because there's nowhere for them to live either. So we really do need to work this out quickly. And we need to get this strategy right, but more importantly, we need to come up with options for downsizing. It's disappointing that we need to put this on hold and its endorsement, but it would be unwise to do that at this point because we would need to go out of to engagement again and all those things that would come with the changes that may come from the state government's proposals. For those who may not be aware, we have a seniors housing forum on Wednesday the 28th of August to be held in Eltham. This has been called for and led by the Positive Ageing Advisory Committee and the council officers that support that committee, one of which I'm very proud to chair. It will be a day with stalls, guest speakers and an opportunity to ask questions of fellow community members but also of officers from all different areas of council. So I'm not sure if the details have been launched yet, but certainly stay tuned for that. So that's Wednesday the 28th of August, and I'm hoping that this forum will help answer some questions for people, or it might actually progress things faster, maybe with the amount of people that attend. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Eyre. Councillor Stockman.
Thanks, Chair. I think it is an emergency. I know it is an emergency. We've got a housing crisis right now, and this has all happened very fast. We've found out about the new 12,000 houses. There is a target there, and it's simple. It's there on engage.vic.gov.au, and you can see the numbers quite simply. So we need to plan for something, and we need to plan just in case the urban growth boundary does change, and if history does repeat itself, back in, I think, in the early 2000s, the Brumby Labor government did change the green wedge over in Whittlesea Council up at Donnybrook. You were only about 2 or 3 years old then, Councillor Ramsden, so you might not remember, but...
Maybe 4.
4, okay. But yeah, look, it has happened before, and as we've heard some of the councillors say here today, it is a state issue, so they can possibly do that. So we need to plan for that. Today I've heard all the submissions, and I've heard words like redraft, simpler, make it more sustainable, and also include other documents and so forth. So there are concerns to go back to a redraft, so I won't be supporting the motion today.
Thank you, Councillor Stockman. I'll just say a couple of words and then I'll give Councillor Duffy the right to reply. You know, already, well, we heard a lot today. You know, thank everyone for coming along and speaking to your submission. But certainly things have been thrown into turmoil with the housing target released by the state government, where we did major activity structure plans for Diamond Creek and Eltham in conjunction with this housing strategy. You put us in a position for substantive change, you know, where we're looking at an extra 2,500 houses. Towards the end of this process, we're told we need to go to 12,000. So it's fair to say that almost all of council, perhaps with the exception of one, were horrified at the notion of 12,000 new dwellings in Nillumbik. How that's going to be achieved, I don't know. You know, just the notion of medium density housing in the activity centres is not welcomed by the residents of Eltham or Diamond Creek. You know, we know that to be true, but that was going to happen, you know, to help us get to that 2,500. God knows how we're going to get to that 12,000. You know, council will make a submission and argue as best we can. The decision hasn't been made, but I'm forecasting that council will try to get that number reduced. Will the state government listen? I'm not sure. There are many reasons why it shouldn't be 12,000, nowhere near it. But you know what we've planned for, as I said, is 2,500. You know, there are people who, of course, want to maintain their local neighbourhood character, whether that being within the urban growth boundary or outside of it. You know, being the green wedge. There are conversations that will have to happen depending on the housing targets, and I think that's why it has to be on hold, because we don't know what those targets are. It's a draft. It's a draft paper at the moment. It's just 12,000 houses for Nillumbik. Once we get a finalised number, then we'll have to get back to work, and perhaps even the major activity centre structure plans will have to be looked at again. So it does seem a real shame so late in the process. We've councils, or you know, 2 councils now have done all this work, getting to this point where we're trying to wrap it all up and have a real plan for the future. Now it's all up in the air. So hopefully that last dot point does bring that home to people in terms of where to next. You know, we don't really know. It's probably not going to be a decision of this council. This housing strategy, I think, as somebody said, Don said, it is effectively redundant. It envisages 2,500 homes where we're currently being told we've got to look for 9,000. So how that's going to be achieved, you know, that's a discussion for the future. But certainly, we'll continue to listen, and we will have to try somehow to meet that target, whatever that ends up being. Hopefully, it's going to be less than 9, but not much more than 2.5. But I'd be surprised if it wasn't substantially more than 2.5. So, look, I'm happy to support the motion, and it's tonight was really about just listening to everyone, and I'm over time. Sorry. Councillor Duffy, right to reply.
Thank you for that, Councillor Perkins. I will be supporting the progression of this, and I do value the contributions that the community have given us today. There have been lots of things that officers can go back to look at making this a better document. We do have time. Whilst things are on hold, we can still do the work that we know that we can do. You know, there were actions that were put forward today. Roma, for example, she said we could look at directing officers to look at how we can include the future homes. We could look at how we can look at support the creation of housing cooperatives, identifying land for retirement clusters, providing incentives to developers to develop the types of homes that we're wanting. We did hear Councillor Stockman talk about looking at whether the urban growth boundary moves. That is a state government decision. They may make changes. I don't know whether they will or not. That's going to be something that will be up to them. But we know loud and clear, we've heard from the community that protecting the green wedge is something that is very near and dear to the people of Nillumbik. I do note also, though, those people that do have land and see the people on the other side of the road, say Yanying Road in Whittlesea, those lands being subdivided and become, you know, a sea of houses. And then across the road on the Nillumbik side, it's just land for cows. So we do need to have a common sense approach to this, to look at what is the best for our community, and creative solutions is the way to go here. We don't want lots of little boxes in Nillumbik. We want houses that work for the people that live here. I'm thinking of my mother-in-law. She's 97. She lives in her home alone. She has done for 15 years since my father-in-law died. There is no way she wants to leave her home, even though it's a 3-bedroom home and it's much bigger than she needs. But she's independently there, loud and proud at 97. And I can see that the residents of Nillumbik would like to be able to do the same thing. But we need to consider in this strategy cooperatives, car housing options, aged independent living. We heard about you know, maybe a creative approach to St Vincent's Eltham, you know, looking at everything so that we can really help meet the requirements of the people of our area, not just because the government is saying we need to do more, but because we know that we need to do more.
You're out of time, and I've given you 2 more seconds, and I go myself. Accidentally. I'll have to put that, well, not have to, I will put that motion to the vote, councillors. So all those in favour? We can't see you, Councillor Egan. Have you got your... She was frozen.
Can we hear?
We'll just
Can she
find
speak?
out how Councillor Egan is voting. She did have a power outage earlier on and she moved to her phone. So we'll just put that vote again once we get Councillor Egan. She's gone.
Yeah.
While we're trying to get Zoom up and going, we're just going to give Councillor Egan a call. Looks like she's coming back. All right, Councillor Egan, you with us? I will put that, if you can hear me, we'll put that motion to the vote. All those in favour?
If you can't see me, can you hear me? Now I'm back.
Yep,
Yeah,
we can see you and hear you. And
In favour.
against? And in favour was all, with the exception of Councillor Stockman, who's against, which will be recorded in the minutes. It is carried. Yep, thanks. Next on the agenda, we have the Nillumbik Integrated Transport Strategy. We've got two speakers tonight. The first is Rosie Morgan and then Alexander Jamieson. Rose, if you want to step forward, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight and to respond to the Integrated Transport Strategy. I'm really pleased to see the sustainability priority that flows through that in recognition of a declaration of a climate emergency. I'd like to speak a little bit about the planning priority about active transport. The extension of the Diamond Creek Trail to Hurstbridge has provided a big boost to a safe active transport opportunities for Hurstbridge residents. As a family of four, we have one electric car and an e-bike, an excellent substitute for a second car. That suits our circumstances. This route provides access to Diamond Creek, Eltham, the amenities in those townships and our workplaces. However, to conveniently reach it requires crossing the busy Heidelberg-Kinglake Road that transitions from 80 to 60 k's. It's at an obscured bend. It crosses railway tracks before accessing the track that's right there. This access point adjoins popular venues like the Hurstbridge Hub, the Childcare, Ovals, Basketball, Bowls Club. And it's no wonder then that this point is very popular, and every day I see people dodging and weaving the cars, crossing the tracks, including families with young children. It's a drop-off spot for the Diamond Valley College afternoon bus, which kids then have to cross the road to get home. So while I'm so appreciative of the many groups involved in the creation of the trail, it's created a massive safety issue for accessing it from the cluster of streets that is Rose Avenue, the Glen, Limbrae, Daphne Avenue, etc. And it seems to me that we need in future a much more holistic approach to the planning of active travel. So if you create it, people will absolutely jump on and use that as a route to get where they need to go. But is there consideration of how residents actually get there? My concern is that there's a lag, I guess, between providing these active transport routes but not considering the access for residents. Hurstbridge residents have reached out to the Bunjil Ward Councillor Egan, and this has not led to any discussion on the issue. We have had some success from our state government member, and I recognise that this road does fall within Vic roads, but we haven't had any council support in lobbying. So I urge council looking at this integrated transport strategy to have a well thought through approach to active transport that involves state government and VicTrack, which I know can be tricky, to ensure that residents, especially our young people, have safe access to these active transport routes and that they're not placed in dangerous situations that's caused by disconnect between...
Sorry, Rosie, your time is up.
Yep.
I'll just ask councillors if they've got any questions for you. Any questions for Rosie, councillors? Councillor Stockman.
Yeah, hi Rosie. Thank you for your submission. Are you aware that number one on the Northern Regional Trail Strategy is Aqueduct Trail Stage 1?
Yep, but I don't feel that that falls into the active transport.
I think it's more like. Can I talk to that?
Oh, well, it's not a conversation.
No, it's not a conversation.
If you've got a question, please ask it.
Sure. Okay. No, the question is there's a whole bunch of it connects plenty through to Diamond Creek, and there's a big population there that would like to get active. So just letting you know.
So what's your question?
So the question is, are you aware of it, stage 1?
Yep.
Thank
and my comments are about ensuring that there's a more holistic approach to the planning from council so that residents can access that trail.
Good on you, Rosie. Thanks very much for your submission. Alexander Jamieson.
Good evening. So I'm a long-time Eltham resident. I've lived in this area my whole life, and I have never had a car, so obviously the active transport strategy is very interesting to me. You may have heard the saying that the purpose of a system is what it does, and I was very happy to see the prioritisation of active transport in the transport strategy. However, if we actually have a look at the centre of Eltham, the commercial core, probably nearly 50% of the land there is actually devoted to the storage of cars at the moment, which doesn't seem to square with the priority of non-car-centric transport in Eltham. At the moment, the car parks, as was noted in the strategy, are quite underutilised. But even when they are fully utilised, the number of people that they benefit has got a fixed upper limit by the number of car parks that are there, and a full car park is just as useless to someone who is driving as a car park which actually isn't there at all. I think that there has to be a major change in the land use, especially in the commercial core of Eltham, around the station, around the supermarket. The idea that we have to have a supermarket surrounded by a giant car park, is the norm in many parts of Melbourne, but it's not the norm in many other parts of the world. Giving that land back over to community uses or to housing, as we have heard about the housing situation as well, is going to benefit a much larger number of people than is currently the case. Having that land use being solely devoted to cars actively discourages other transport modes, makes walking hazardous, and makes, riding a bike hazardous. And I think the land use strategy has got to change to reflect that. So then, if we were to change the car parking priority in Eltham, some thought was given, how would people get there? And I noticed that one of the things mentioned in the strategy was maybe looking into rideshare services. I think that would probably not be a good idea. I think that's inefficient compared to fixed route buses in terms of the number of people that it can benefit and how it can scale. There's a well-recognised figure both in Australia and overseas that about the lower minimum level for a fixed route bus is about 6 boardings an hour, which even our local 582 bus is much more than that. And that is actually equal to the most efficient rideshare vehicle operating in the densest part of the city. So for the same number of vehicles, same number of drivers, if we prioritise fixed route buses, we can get a much greater benefit.
Thank you very much, Alexander. Any questions, councillors, of Alexander? Looks like Councillor Duffy's no.
I was just going to say I found it very interesting, so thank you.
No worries, thank you.
Thank you. So that's it for the submissions on the Nillumbik Integrated Transport Strategy. I will look for a mover. Councillor Emtran.
Yes, I'd like to move that the committee acting under delegation from Council 1 acknowledges and considers the matters contained in the verbal and written submissions to the Integrated Transport Strategy, issues an option paper which will form the draft Integrated Transport Strategy. 2, requests a further report be presented at the August 2024 Council meeting in consideration of adoption of the Integrated Transport Strategy. 3, resolves that the confidential, unredacted copies of written submissions and survey responses to the exhibition of the public engagement for the Integrated Transport Strategy issues and options paper consultation in Attachment 3 and the confidential, unredacted Integrated Transport Strategy issues and options paper consultation summary 2024 in Attachment 5 remain confidential on the grounds specified in the definition of confidential information in Section 3(1)(f) of the Local Government Act 2020. And 4, thanks all respondents to this community engagement and expresses Council's gratitude for their contribution to this project.
Thank you, Councillor Ramtran. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Duffy. Back to you, Councillor Ramtran.
Yes, thank you. And thank you to our 2 speakers tonight as well. I really find documents like this fascinating, and I think it really is an incredibly important piece of work. I'd like to thank the team who put in a huge amount of effort through this consultation. They really have gone above and beyond to hear from a whole range of different people across the Shire, and that's been wonderful. And it's led to some really good feedback and data which will help to inform the development of the actual strategy following this issues and options paper. The issues and options paper itself, which I first read earlier this year, is really well written. It has a big focus on climate, as was mentioned by the first speaker, and that's really pleasing to see, particularly given Council's declaration of a climate emergency and the real need for us to act on that under the Climate Action Plan, and it responds to that really well. It looks at active transport, it looks at public transport, it looks at diversifying the way that people are able to get around Nillumbik so that you don't have to hop in your car and drive 1 minute down the road to go to the shops or access the local services, so that you can commute to work by bus or train. Public transport in particular is very lacking and very important for people in rural areas, both the young and the old. Kids who are too young to drive yet and can't get around without their parents' taxi service, or people growing older who want to age in place who aren't able to necessarily drive at night, and don't feel safe driving at night. And in many rural places, there's no bus service for those people. So public transport, while I think it could be improved across the Shire, it's completely absent in some areas where it really is genuinely needed. In terms of active transport, I think there are some real prime locations across Nillumbik where active transport could be greatly improved, and we could see people being able to walk around or cycle around and forget their cars completely when they're travelling in the local area. But I don't think we'll ever have active transport across the whole Shire, particularly looking at our rural areas, particularly looking at our topography, the hills, how sparse the Shire is. There are some areas in Nillumbik where we will never be able to have people just walking and cycling to the shops or to work. Some people might be up to it. I certainly like cycling the hills around here myself, but I would never cycle them on the way to work because you just arrive sweaty. So we've got to be realistic with that. But I think this strategy does that, and I think it paints a really positive picture going forwards for how we can make transport work in Nillumbik and reduce that emphasis on cars. And I think it was a wonderful point that was made around the amount of car parking in places like Eltham where, you could replace that with housing. I don't think we'll be able to do that anytime soon. I think the demand on those parking spaces will continue long into the future, but with strategies like this, we can start to reduce that. We can start to change the way that people get around, and maybe one day there won't be so much need for that parking. That would be a wonderful place to get to. And so, yeah, just to thank the speakers again, and I'm looking forward to seeing the draft strategy when it's done. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Duffy.
Hi, thank you again to Rosie and Alexander for speaking tonight, and to the 246 people who put in submissions, and to the council officers who've been working very hard on this. I acknowledge you in the room today. Thank you for being here tonight. This is a really important strategy. All of these things interlink, which we realise. So an integrated transport strategy has to work with our housing strategy, which has to work with our neighbourhood character, which also needs to work with our climate action plan. So, you know, in COVID, I hopped on my push bike for the first time in 13 years. I was a danger on the Diamond Creek Trail. There's no way I'm going to hop on a bike to ride down to the supermarket to get my groceries to feed my family and carry them home. So we need to be realistic in what we're trying to achieve with an integrated transport strategy. So I love the idea of everybody being able to use public transport and to use bikes, but the reality is we're not going to do that. The reality is we're not going to have everybody walking to the places that we would like to see people more walking to, because we've got such a hilly topography here. We've just heard from people about the ageing population that we've got. It's not realistic for us to consider that people that are older are going to be wanting to use active transport to be able to get around to do the basic things in their life. Recreationally, yes, but as I get older, I'm going to need other people to help drive me to places, and I can't rely on my kids to do that, because who knows where they're going to be. We see all of these complexities all the time. So getting our integrated transport strategy right is really important. We see footpaths needing to be built, needing rectification works, and council's done a great job. I look at a number of footpaths that are in place now that weren't there 10 years ago, and the people that use them to get to places, particularly kids walking to school. Bus stops. There are bus stops, but some of the bus stops, they're really impractical of trying to even catch a bus from, because, you know, they're all eroded away because they don't have cement padding, or they don't have infrastructure that makes it enjoyable to catch a bus. If it's pouring with rain, no one wants to stand waiting for a bus that might come in 20 minutes. There are all of these factors. So, you know, with our integrated transport strategy, it gives us the nuts and bolts to be able to improve things. And we heard the themes raised by the community: road safety, pedestrian crossing, missing active transport links, lack of bus networks, and footpath amenity concerns. So, you know, I am really pleased that council is taking this approach and looking at how do we solve some of the big problems that we have, to be able to make life easier for us all, in the lens of how it all mixes together in this big jigsaw puzzle of life in Nillumbik. I think that that's about all I will say on that. So thank you again to the submitters and to everybody else who read through the paper, and I'd really like to encourage people in the community to get involved.
And that's time, Councillor Duffy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other councillor wishing to speak? Councillor Egan.
Thank you, Councillor Perkins. Yes, I think Councillor Duffy and Councillor Ramcharan have both summed up quite a few things of what I was going to say, especially in relation to the rural areas. My apologies, Rosie, because I've gone through my emails while I was sitting here and your name does not even come up. So please contact staff and we need to have a talk. I have met with some other people who've contacted me over this issue, specifically people who are trying to get buses out, you know, doing a loop from Hurstbridge around St Andrews and Smiths Gully. I've met with them on a number of occasions, and I would be more than happy to meet with you too to discuss your issues. Like Councillor Duffy said, even bus stops are an issue. So unfortunately, I actually have bus stops where I live, but we don't have any buses. So there's something quite drastically wrong there. I think from a sustainability point of view, I think we're still a long way from making that work, especially in the rural areas, Councillor Ramcharan has said. We're still lacking in just some of the basic infrastructure too, as far as charges and things like that go. And I wasn't even aware till we went to Canberra the other day that Teslas have different charges to other cars. So you've got all these complicated pieces that all have to go together and work with all of our other strategies and our council plan. I think everybody's on the same page here in terms of councillors, and we're trying to solve this, but it's an incredibly complicated issue, as you can read by everything that's in the report. So thanks again to the staff for all of the work, and please, Rosie, reach out and I'm more than happy to talk to you about the trail and what your issues are with that. The only person from Hurstbridge who's actually contacted me is the school. So I've had discussions with the school over it. So please reach out and we can have a discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Egan. Councillor Eyre.
Thank you, Chair. This integrated transport strategy needs to be reflective of our community's needs. And so by hearing from residents, that's the way it will be reflective. So thanks to everyone who provided feedback and submitted this evening. The congestion busting program or project, which has been on the go for quite a few years, is well and truly on the go in Eltham, making it safer and easier for pedestrians and those with prams or mobility needs to cross the roads without having to go down and up again. And so I can see, and I've already used them myself, the benefits for those new treatments on the roads, reducing the speeds as well. Public transport, particularly in the north of the Shire, is non-existent. And while we talk about downsizing options for our older residents, and we know that this is not happening straight away or in the very near future, we need to also make it easier for them to get around the Shire, go to the shops, cafes, medical appointments and socialisation. Otherwise, we're going to end up with a community that's isolated and lonely at home. We also want our young people to be able to be independent. We all want our children to be independent, but if they can't get to work or catch up with their friends without needing a lift, it kind of changes the whole idea of their outing. So we want to know that our young people can learn to be independent in addition to working or catching up with friends using public transport options. Another thought that I also had too is that by reducing the amount of cars on the road might reduce the rat running and speeding vehicles through some of the feeder roads that we have, particularly along Allendale Road and Ingram's Road, and I'm sure all over the Shire. So getting people off the roads, making sure we have more public transport options will certainly ease the congestion, especially when we have the one lane in and out of Eltham and some of the other areas. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stockman.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to talk about the Northern Regional Trail Strategy and the Aqueduct Trail Stage 1, which will actually link into the Diamond Creek Trail, and it just makes it more inclusive. We can actually, there's a big population, particularly around this area, around Greensborough, even outside of our Shire in St Helena, that can actually access the Diamond Creek Trail. I live in Diamond Creek and I get my car and I drive to the trail 3 minutes and then I access the trail that way, but this is actually a great link that will hook it in, and that's why it's number one on the regional, Northern Regional Trail Strategy. Also too, we've got some great facilities here, and even if you look at the Youth Council strategy, there's basketball here, there's a whole bunch of different things here for the youth, and I think it's a fantastic link, and when we explore that more, it's going to be very exciting.
Thanks, Councillor Stockman. Look, very happy to support the motion, and there's good work being done here by officers in consultation with community. It's shaping up well. There's a long way to go on it. Probably, it did get me thinking, Alexander's submission around the dependency on cars in Nillumbik, and it is huge. We can't deny that Nillumbik is a very car-dependent municipality. Not just in the rural parts of the Shire, but the urban parts of the Shire as well. Whether we like it or not, it doesn't sort of seem to matter how good or bad the public transport is, that people like to drive their cars to get on the train. There are many people in Nillumbik that wouldn't even consider getting a bus to the train station, even though the bus goes virtually outside their door. There's a whole cultural shift that needs to happen in Nillumbik. I'm not look, the other issues with cars and activity centres is that retailers and businesses in the activity centres can't get enough car parks. Their business depends on it. They know if, say, their car parks are taken up by train commuters, they lose business. it effectively can be run out of business. Because without car parks and people being able to, in a car-dependent areas of Eltham and Diamond Creek, unless people can drive easily to do their grocery shopping or any other shopping in the activity centres, they drive somewhere else. They'll drive to Greensboro, they'll drive to Doreen. So there's some of the challenges that we face. We know how much people hate parking fines, for people overstaying. But generally those parking fines are there to support the businesses. It's the local businesses that really rely on cars because of the car dependency that we have. I suppose the other issue we turn our minds to is increased housing density in activity centres and the notion of waiving any car parking requirements. That might sound good in some, good theoretically for some, trying to force, new residencies not to have cars, but invariably they still come along with their cars and they'll use that car parking that's intended, and the land is owned by the local businesses, mind you. We're not talking about car parking on council land. We're generally talking about car parking on private property, and it's those businesses again that will pay the price. They've already paid for the land, and then they lose the opportunity to have their customers using their own car parks. So the whole notion's a vexed question. When we're trying to support businesses in economic development, get local jobs in Nillumbik in a very car dependent area. Look, we're not different from any other urban area across Melbourne, I would say, in terms of the car dependency. But I did see some stats a few years ago that indicated we had at least 3 cars per household. I'll finish there. Thank you. I think all councillors have spoken. If they wish to, we'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? It's carried. It's unanimous. Thank you, councillors. The next item is the Wattle Glen Public Realm Framework Outcomes of Engagement. And councillors received registration requests from a total of 4 submitters. We've got 3 in person, 1 via Zoom. The first speaker is Neil Woods on behalf of the Wattle Glen Tennis Club. Neil, if you're here. Can you, Neil?
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. Wattle Glen, whether you know it or not, is actually considered a tiny town. In the last census, it was 1,911 people or something like that, which allowed us to apply for some funding for tiny towns, but we didn't get it. But anyway, that's another story. I just would, with the framework from the Wattle Glen Tennis Club perspective, I speak a little bit as a resident of almost 50 years, but mainly from the tennis club perspective. I'd like to let the councillors know that we are extremely disappointed that the councils have decided to no longer support the Wattle Glen Tennis Club. So you'll support 10 of the 11 clubs, but you will no longer support Wattle Glen Tennis Club. So be warned that we will be making a lot more noise about that closer to election time. What I would like to congratulate the council on is the Diamond Creek Trail. Excellent job, and I'm very impressive. And this framework was to get more access to that trail, because the moment you got Wattle Glen on one side of the railway line, you got the trail over there, and it's really difficult, and the pathways and all that, and that was the beatings we had there. And I walk that trail every weekend with my dog, and I walk around a lot of the area. I do run into a lot of problems with the access around the tennis club as well. But I would like to just point out that the trail from Wilson's Oval, Wilson's Road across the bridge to the railway line is really dangerous. And the council should be aware that you need to be looking at some sort of footpath there, some sort of pedestrian crossing over that, because that's the point from Hurstbridge and Diamond Creek to get to Wattle Glen and to get to the tennis club or to get to anything in there. And that is really, really dangerous, that particular stretch of road. In fact, if I walk across there, I have to wait and walk on the road, and then I walk to the train station.
I would recommend, even though you don't have any control over this, that if you did have a roundabout at the corner at Wilson's Road and Manish Avenue, that would slow, even if you kept it at 70, that would slow a lot of traffic down and make the whole area much safer, much easier for people to get to the tennis club or to the milk bar or the general store, if that was able to be, and even getting cars, even though you don't have a control over it, getting it up to, you could turn left out of that train car park and do a roundabout at Wilson's Road and come back down, so it would be a lot safer. It's very dangerous coming out of that car park. To finish off with the Diamond, around the Wattle Glen Tennis Club, I was surprised to learn that the Green Wedge Trail starts at Valley Road. Now, to walk past the tennis club and get down to Valley Road, that's fraught with danger. People don't walk that much anymore because some people I know don't walk it because of snakes and the overhang. In fact, I maintain that by picking up a lot of rubbish as I walk there. But to start a Green Wedge Trail on a road with no trail, no footpath, no anything, and advertise it as Green Wedge is really, really bizarre. My time's up. I just say that there's no time, that you need to plan for the future. And Wattle Glen Tennis Club, car park, all that sort of stuff. When you do this draft motion, you should be considering the facilities as well as just the houses. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Neil. Any questions of Neil, councillors? Councillor, I'll go Councillor Egan first.
Thanks, Neil, for your submission. I couldn't quite follow where you cross the road to get to the trail. Could you just run me by that again? How you access the trail?
If you come from Diamond Creek to Wattle Glen, you can get to the bridge across on Wilson's Road, a one-lane bridge. There's a footpath. But then if you try to get up to the main road, the King Lake Road, there's no pedestrian crossing at the railway line, and the road up to King Lake Road, there's no trail. I'm not talking about necessarily building a footpath, even just a trail, even just a bit of room to get away from the road. It's very dangerous to walk along there.
Yep. Yeah, I have to ask you a question, so I can't tell you what. I'll talk about that in a moment. My other question is with in fact, I'll answer the Green Wedge question too when I talk about it in closing. So thanks again for your submission. I'll be in touch.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Eyre.
Yeah, thanks for coming in. I just wanted to understand what you mean by the Wattle Glen Tennis Club is not being supported. Do you mean with accessibility or do you mean financially?
Financially. We've been told 10 of the 11 tennis clubs will be supported, but because we happen to be on Crown land, I have it in print. The Olympic Shire will no longer support the Wattle Glen Tennis Club financially.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
Mike Dean, was email from him. I've got a couple of those, so I'll be putting those in quotes in newsletters and making that well known to the public.
Don't think there's any other questions, Neil. Oh, hang on. We've got one.
Thank you. I do have a question. And this is the Wattle Glen Public Realm Framework, and so outcomes of the engagement. But living in Wattle Glen is all about living in a village, and you've talked about a tiny town. Going through the submissions, it's not just about how to, to get back to my question, it is related to the Wattle Glen Tennis Club. You just mentioned some information to Councillor Eyre. Do you believe that because your tennis club is on Crown land, that council should give you the same support as it would give any other organisation that was on Crown land providing a service in the community?
Not necessarily the same support, but some support, at least acknowledge we've been there 100 years.
Yeah, I was going to ask how long.
Been supported in the past with court services and...
We've got to try to keep things on track, Neil.
Yep. Thank you,
this
Neil.
is the Wattle Glen Club around
no, I agree.
framework.
Okay.
Yep. Thank you very much, Neil. Next submitter and speaker is Anika Van Helsen. No stranger to this place.
Thank you, Nillumbik Council. This draft framework document is a testimony to missed opportunities and a failure of imagination. As expressed by many people in their responses, the draft framework is a disappointment and a worry. It lacks transparency and has lost its original intent. It failed to mention big traffic light plans afoot behind the scenes. it failed to live up to its promises for innovative community collaboration, all contributing to a damaging loss of trust in government. Missing is a strong vision and concepts such as Wattle Glen's role as a gateway to the Green Wedge and to the Yarra Valley, Wattle Glen as a centre for recreational trails, Wattle Glen as a place to strengthen biodiversity. Instead, the framework has mostly turned into a traffic management plan and become dominated by the Department of Transport and Planning and its secret agenda. To have any hope of averting a continuation of poor outcomes in Wattle Glen, genuine collaboration with all stakeholders is needed. In conclusion, I note the Department of Energy, Environment and Climate Action identifying Wattle Glen's biodiversity values as being very important. And like the Department of Energy, Environment and Climate Change, we residents too want to be involved in the early concept and design stages of this project. Thank you.
Thanks, Anika. Any questions of Anika, councillors? Councillor Egan.
Thank you, Councillor Perkins. Thank you, Anika, for your submission and all your other submissions. And I've read all the submissions, all 127 odd ones of them. So in a few words, because I have to ask you a question, I can't talk about it, what would you do not forgetting the transport problems that we have and the traffic problems that we have, and the fact that Wattle Glen has the oldest aged community in Nillumbik, what would you do in terms of this as opposed to what we've done within our limited scope, having to deal with DOT and VicTrack in the state government?
Well, as a number of submissions, a significant number of submissions have suggested for council to consider just assessing the Residents' Association's proposal for new open space, and that will allow more connections and a safer connection between trails and greater connectivity within our township.
So how would acquiring the land on Manish Road and that goes all the way to Clark Avenue, how would that help people cross the road to use the Diamond Creek Trail, for example?
The Residents' Association is suggesting a roundabout, you know, low-key, like I guess what's commonplace in Hurstbridge, a roundabout at the corner of Wilson's Road and Manish Road, and including, and there are concepts around across the world of where roundabouts prioritise bike tracks, and if it was designed, if it had that kind of concept in mind for its design, that will allow a safe crossing of the road, of the main road, because it really forces traffic to slow down. Once they approach the roundabout, traffic will slow down.
So there's a whole lot of, we've already got the big roundabout, and the other problem we've got there is the different changes of speed. We go 80,
And we're
70,
having a
60.
question?
It's, I'm prefacing my question. If you didn't
Yeah.
interrupt me, we'd already be there.
Right. Let's move along.
So we've got the big roundabout, and then you're proposing a second one. So you've still got people walking and aged people. So they're going to have to, first of all, get across the big roundabout if they live in the other part of Wattle Glen, which is opposite Pepper's Paddock, not where you live on Clark Avenue, but the other side. So it all costs money. And how do you propose we pay for this? The state hasn't got any money, so where are we going to fund it? How are we going to fund it?
Well, there is there's money for you're passing all sorts of projects tonight. It all costs money: transport, housing strategies, everything. It all costs money, and it comes down to priorities and prioritising your requirements.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Regan. Any other questions of Anika, councillors? Councillor Duffy.
Hi, I've got two questions just quickly, Anika. Thank you for your submission. One question is, in your opinion and canvassing of other people in Wattle Glen, would they prefer to see roundabouts continue or the replacement with traffic lights? The other question is, you mentioned with the framework that you thought it missed opportunity and lacked creativity, and I'm wondering if there might be two things that you might say that you'd like to see.
Regarding your first question, I think many people would prefer roundabouts. Of course, there are people who, in all issues, you get the full spectrum. But from my reading of submissions and around the township, people like the roundabout. It gives a better flow, and particularly once you get traffic lights, it's a very urban element, plus your central landscaping will be gone. So it's a very severe option. So I think that's the general preference. And sorry, what was your second question?
The second one was about what creativity would you like to see? You talked about it being a missed opportunity and a lack of creativity in what has been produced.
Well, I think there are so many opportunities in Wattle Glen, and I'll come back to the Residents' Association proposal, but also in terms of our biodiversity, our potential to contribute to biodiversity. We are a township straddling the urban growth boundary. We are a gateway, and that is a very significant role, but none of that comes through in this document. But there, particularly because we are dealing with a very large department, the Department of Planning, and we've had experience with the big build in Wattle Glen, and they tend to bulldoze. They don't listen. What has happened in Wattle Glen is such a shame. It's a case of missed opportunities, because the car park there is a disaster, really. It could have been done so much better in a different place. We weren't against a car park, but it's just, we weren't consulted, and you end up with very poor outcomes. And I fear the same thing is going to happen this time around, because this draft framework lacks a vision, because it just talks about traffic.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Anika, for your submission, and thanks for coming. I don't think there's any other questions. Next speaker is Sue Rosenheim. Thanks, Sue. Your microphone's still on.
Good-o. Get straight into it then. So as I do, I'd like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung people as the traditional owners of the land that we're talking about here in the Wattle Glen area. And in relation to this framework, Part A of the framework presents itself as an analysis, but I actually struggled to find the analysis. There wasn't a rationale or documentation or the link to the previous consultation results, and the claim on the website that the Part A confirms the findings of the community consultation are not consistent with what those findings actually were, which you can only find in summary referenced on the website. 3 themes being presented of the rural character and natural and environmental setting are valued, fundamental lack of connectivity amongst key points in the township, not to key points beyond the township, unsafe conditions for travel, especially non-motorists, are amongst key points in the township, again in the township, not externally. In the summary, there's no reference to the lack of connection externally. And yet on page 5, there's a claim that, without any further analysis, that it's severed from Diamond Creek, really strong word, with a footpath, a road that takes buses as well as cars, a train, and the much-mentioned bike and footpath already there. It doesn't feel severed to me. Page 8 talks about segregated and impacted by transport infrastructure, but the rationale for that and the claim and what it relates to is really difficult to understand, where there are some squiggle lines on the map with no explanation as to what they represent and what they're based on. And so to me, that's just 2 examples from those pages, 8 pages, that it's not an analysis. So then part B, which is the plans, it's really difficult. There's such complete lack of any detail, it's difficult to comment on what the plans actually are. What the statements say don't appear to address any of the 3 community concerns, as even when they reference connectivity, it's not in respect of internal connection, but as a way to get out. Most glaringly obvious is there's nothing that speaks to addressing the number 1 community concern about rural character and natural environment setting being valued. Nothing to enhance this, and most actions seem to imply more infrastructure, which actually would do the reverse. Lastly, there's been some talk, which I admit is rumour, to my perspective, and Anika had mentioned as well, about traffic lights to replace the roundabout. And on that, I go through the roundabout that's already there at all times of day and night, and the traffic moves really smoothly. Lights would introduce unnecessary hold-ups, idling, cars, noise, and air and light pollution, which are not consistent with many other strategies in the council strategies and not consistent with the finding number 1 from the community consultation. And globally, the reverse is happening. Evidence is demonstrating that roundabouts are safer and more effective and better for the environment are replacing traffic lights.
Thanks very much, Sue. Any questions of Sue, councillors? Councillor Duffy.
Just very quickly, so Sue, what I'm hearing from you is that you would like Nillumbik to, am I correct in understanding that you'd like Nillumbik Council to advocate to keep the roundabouts rather than replace them with a series of traffic lights?
Yes, that's part of my advocacy here, and also think as the North East link is built, there'll be less traffic through that area in times to come as well. And, yep. And also I'm just advocating for more detail and actually representation of the community engagement and some analysis rather than maps with some notations and no explanation. It's really difficult to then say, and then in the plans it's statements that don't represent plans to me at all.
Councillor Stockman.
Thanks, Sue, for your submission. So where do you think a lot of the traffic's coming from?
I think a lot of people are using the challenges with going from the end of the ring road through to the East Link, and they're going up through Wattle Glen, Kangaroo Ground, Warrandyte, and onto East Link through Ringwood, which when that's joined up, that won't be necessary.
All right, thanks very much, Sue. Thanks for your submission.
No worries.
The final speaker is on Zoom. We'll see how this goes. Lindsay Donoghue. Are you there, Lindsay?
Okay. So are we okay now or not?
We can hear you. We just can't see you. We'll just.
Okay. Let me press OK. OK on the video and.
Yep.
There we are. You've got me.
Yep. Well
You've
done.
got me in all my wonderful years of living in Wattle Glen. I want to first thank Neil Woods, who I haven't seen for many, many years, because 17 years ago, when I had a heart attack on the tennis court at Wattle Glen, he was the only person who understood CPR and kept me alive. Okay? So thanks, Neil. He's a good man. I also would
Lindsay,
like to...
we'll do you a favour. We'll reset the clock on that one. So we'll just bring you back to 3 minutes.
Thank you. I'd like to mention that the Mayor talked about the importance of the train line and also the train line in Eltham being available for housing. It's all Vic Track land. If we get more trains or more public transport, that's never going to end up being anything other than what it is. my paper was a 3-page submission, and hopefully some of the people there have read it. It follows up a 2-page submission in 2021. My view is that the whole thing, whatever's done, has to be done safely, and I try to be concise. Basically, I want to cross the main road in Wattle Glen from the housing side to the railway station, right? And I just want to do it safely, and I can't. I would invite anyone to come out and see me. You've all got my phone number somewhere in there. Let's try and cross the road in morning peak, afternoon peak, at dark, when you've got kids and all these sort of things. It is just not possible. That is the biggest thing. It is caused by the traffic speed through there, which is 70 kilometres an hour. The traffic volume, and it was talked about with Sue a few minutes ago, the traffic volume increased exponentially, doubled many times when for traffic to get from Doreen or from the Plenty Valley across to the Diamond Valley and then across to the Yarra Valley. So it would come across from Wilson Road to Wattle Glen to Kangaroo Ground to Warrandyte and Ringwood. It's not as bad, but it is still horrendous. And I'm not sure I agree with Sue where she says completion of the tunnel might alleviate some of that, because Yanyeen Road is still a sewer in itself. The traffic volume is therefore there. The road is relatively straight beyond the roundabout at Kangaroo Ground Road, and it is the one place where people can pass, or they think they can pass, and they'll do whatever they can. And if someone wants to come out, I'd really love to just sit 10 minutes through peak hour with any one of the councillors, some of the executive officers. Basically, I'm looking at my notes, reduce the speed, put a small roundabout in, footpaths. But the council was established when they did the separation of councils. Nillumbik was rated as a rural shire, which means you don't get it, but then funding was an urban shire. So it's never had enough money to do the things they need to do. And I just leave it at that. I want to drop the traffic speed, and I'm happy to do it myself if I can get you to agree, even though it's a Vic Roads road.
Thanks very much, Lindsay. I'll throw down the councillors if they've got any questions. Nope. We've got Councillor Egan with a hand up.
Thanks, good, Karen. Yeah, let's go.
Thanks, Lindsay, for your submission, and I agree with every single one of your points. Were you aware that we can't actually, whether it's a council road or a Vic road, we cannot change the speed limits? And I'm more than happy to stand out there with things to help stop the cars, but I can't. So we can work on that together.
Okay. My answer to that is my background is in technical infrastructure throughout state government authorities, and I understand what you can do and what you can't do. And over since the pre-Kennett years, when it was absolutely dot I's, cross T's, there's so much flexibility in what you do. If you can find somebody that might say, oh yeah, well, I don't know about that. Well, if I didn't tell anyone in your meeting that tomorrow I'm going to go out with a dozen 50-kilometre signs and I'm going to replace them at my own cost, and you're not even going to know about it, what are you going to do? You're going to ring Vic Roads and say, look, some idiot's gone and done this. But we want that.
I won't.
I know you won't. And I'm just saying I'm happy to do that. It's a few $1,000s. It's not a big deal in order to make it safe. Do you ever drive over the speed limit? Vic Roads say you shouldn't, but everybody does it. Like, I'm just saying it's a minute thing. Vic Roads have got such a long list of things. I know I've got contacts in VicTrack, Metro Trains, a lot of those sort of organisations. I can probably organise getting a crossing. I would like to think that it'd be a bit harder now, but while they were doing all that work on the Hurstbridge duplication, which, by the way, only gate for the people there who don't know about it, the Hurstbridge train line duplication project,
Lindsay,
very well named.
I think you've answered the question.
It provided 2 extra trains in the morning and 2 extra trains at night.
You can only answer my questions, unfortunately, Lindsay. Contact me out of council.
I'll do that, and we should catch up and have a coffee because, and basically, if the
Peter's
whole
going to cut you off.
the whole project needs to be done, and if nothing happens in the next 6 months, you will find all of your councillors, because if it does, if I don't change it, and someone gets killed. There was an accident there on Saturday night.
All right, that's it.
Saturday night, the police said it was due to speed.
Thank you for submitting.
Thank you very much for your time, and I enjoyed listening to all the stuff that you poor people have to put up with week after week in your meetings. Thank you very much for all of your attention.
Thank you.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
A man after my own heart.
All right, we'll move to a motion, councillors. Looking for a motion. Councillor Egan, I think you have a motion. Yeah, muted.
I'm technically challenged tonight, my apologies. Yes, I'd like to move a recommendation as per the papers and what's on screen, but there's one extra point over the page. And I actually can't read that.
Do you want me to read it out for you?
Notes the level of detail identified in the Wattle Glen Public Realm Framework is high level and strategic to enable partnership with state agencies on their assets identified in the framework. Further detailed plans will be developed in consultation with the community for future individual projects leading on from an adopted framework plan.
Thank you, Councillor Egan. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Duffy. Back to you, Councillor Egan.
Thank you, Councillor Perkins. Yes, thank you, Anika, and I've lost everybody's names again now. I've got too many pieces of paper open. Neil, Sue and Lindsay. You've all touched on different aspects of the framework. We did have a lot more detail starting out when we started this process a number of years ago. But unfortunately, when it came to discussing traffic issues, specifically in road issues and transport issues with the relevant state authorities, they wouldn't have a bar of any details in the plan. And the only way that we could get in principle support was if we brought it back to a very high level document. We now have that support, which we now means we can now start working on individual projects within the framework. And I can absolutely guarantee that whatever is put forward will be going out to the community in, more than once, as we've already done. But we're very hamstrung by the departments in each of the issues. What's been abundant again in the 4 submitters tonight, everybody wants roundabouts, which was something that I wasn't aware of before. So that's an interesting thing. One of the biggest problems we do have are the different changes of speed limits. It changes 5 times between Diamond Creek and Hurstbridge. And going down to that first roundabout coming from Diamond Creek, as Lindsay said, you've got 70 k's per hour. I sat in my car the other day watching a father and his child trying to get back on the Wattle Glen side of the road from where that new dreadful car park is that Anika spoke about. It took them 14 minutes to get across the road because they just couldn't, because of the number of cars coming in both directions because of the T intersection, they couldn't get across. And there's no defined footpath, there's just a little bit of a depression in the concrete medium strip. And then when they got halfway, it took them another couple of minutes to get over. So I know a lot of the people want all the other issues solved, but until we solve the safety issues and the traffic issues and the road issues, we actually can't solve the other problems. And they're all interwoven in all of our other plans, as Councillor Duffy mentioned in the previous item. The state doesn't have any money, we don't have any money, and as Lindsay's mentioned too, one of our biggest problems is the fact that we're we don't get the grants that we're supposed to. We're confined as urban when we're mainly rural, and Wattle Glen, to all intents and purposes, is rural. So we don't get the relevant grants that we need. We worked in Canberra and talked about that with Polly's the week before last, about funding issues, and public transport was one of those. And it's not just about public transport, it's roads, it's the state of our roads, it's all these issues combined in one. So you must take confidence in the fact that we know what's going on in terms of trying to advocate for all of these projects, but we're very constrained in what we can do, and we can't hold a gun to the state government's head to get funding. All we can do is keep banging on the door and doing the best we can, which we do. And we have to get the relevant authorities on board as well. It's not just the government. We've got VicTrack. There's 3 or 4 different ones involved here, which makes it even more difficult. You've got DELP as well. So trying to get them all together and get everybody in the same page is very difficult. So once we can actually get some plans out, it'll go back out to the community, and then you'll be able to comment on that. And I'd encourage everybody who wants to have some say in this to please let us know, because unless you tell us what you want, we don't know what you want. So as many people as possible need to put in submissions. So I'm looking forward to seeing what you come back with at the next round of submissions, whether I'm here or not. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Egan. Councillor Duffy.
Thank you. Thank you to everyone that's come along to speak about this tonight, and to those that put their submissions through formally through the process. We've listened. I won't reiterate what Councillor Egan has said, because she said that so well. What I will do is just say that I take heart in that we can change speed limits. An example in my ward is Wattle Tree Road. Wattle Tree Road going through Eltham North has recently been changed from being a 70-kilometre zone to a 60-kilometre zone. And so that has taken a number of years to happen, but it has happened. So, hearing about the safety requirement just to be able to get from the housing side of Wattle Glen across to the trail and to the train station, this is a really great opportunity for us to, again, do what we can as a community and a council working together to advocate for that one change, because that can happen and it doesn't need to take 13 years. There's been a number of years that this has been on the radar. Let's see if we can make that happen in 12 months' time. That's even too long, but let's try and be realistic with that. That was the thing that I was really wanting to highlight, is that we can change the speed limits even though it is a state road. Let's be optimistic and really put forward our case as to why that should happen. And again, thank you for all of the impassioned conversation that's happened tonight about Wattle Glen being a gateway, the Wattle Glen tennis court being a 100-year community gathering space at Wattle Glen, and for all of the other things that have been raised. We've been listening, and let's get this working so that it's right, because it has been on I suppose the cooktop for a number of years, and I know that Councillor Egan has talked about, the time that's gone into this already. So, yeah, I'd really like to see some great outcomes happen here. So thank you for your feedback, and let's see what the next iteration of this is going to be, because it's not the end. As the final point in the motion is, it's, this is a high level, but the detail is to come. So let's make sure that the detail is great and it's what the community wants. Thank you.
Any other speakers? Councillor Entrin.
Yes, look, I'd like to thank everybody who came in to speak on the plan today. I think I've heard the concerns that have been raised by at least a good portion of the Wattle Glen community around the vagueness of what's presented. And look, a lot of that is due to requirements from the Department of Transport and Planning. But I do acknowledge the difficulty of commenting on a document that has very little detail and lines on maps that are often tricky to interpret. I've heard everybody's concerns about traffic lights, as Councillor Egan noted. I think that's really interesting to hear from so many people. They don't want traffic lights. And hopefully that's something that's heard loud and clear there as well. I really do hope that this does happen, that future projects will be developed in consultation with the community. It's really critical. I think we can all agree that we need to improve road safety and connectivity within Wattle Glen. We do want people to be able to walk around the township. We want people to be able to walk to the shops, walk to the train station, get around by foot, access the Diamond Creek Trail. That's fantastic. But we need to be careful about how we do that so that we don't change the character of what Wattle Glen is. It's a rural township. That's what it is. Half of it's outside of the urban growth boundary. It's a rural township, and we love it just the way that it is. We've heard people question the strategy's focus on connecting Wattle Glen to Diamond Creek, and I hear that feedback as well. And I think it is a good question to ask, do we really need to focus so heavily on connecting Wattle Glen to Diamond Creek, or do we treat Wattle Glen as its own distinct area and connect people within Wattle Glen while working to improve that road safety, particularly for people who want to take active transport around Wattle Glen itself? And I also hear what people have said about how this, there were hopes for this plan to focus on giving more of a character to Wattle Glen as the gateway to the Green Wedge, the gateway to the Yarra Valley, connecting to the Diamond Creek Trail, the Green Wedge Trail, a pretty rural township with a very significant biodiversity value. And I hear what people are saying about how that's missing from what's been presented in this round of consultation. So we've heard what everybody has to say. Thank you to the speakers tonight. Thank you to everybody who made submissions on the framework itself during the consultation. I think we need to consider them very carefully as we decide next steps. Thank you.
Any other speakers, councillors? Councillor Ree.
I think everyone else has. I should as well. I think that for residents who live in that community, they know what they want, what the feel of the community is like and how it should be represented. So therefore, we should be listening to the feedback that's provided. I live in Eltham. Although I represent Nillumbik, I'm not an expert on Wattle Glen, so I'm guided by the feedback that's provided by the residents there, and I will continue to do that for them. So thank you.
Thank you. If there's no other councillors wishing to speak, look, I'll certainly support the motion. Certainly, you know, when this started, I recall conversations around, you know, trying to put a boundary around the study area, and it was largely about trying to not have the conversation sidetracked by notions of council finding money to buy private land in Wattle Glen, which, you know, has been and probably will be considered in the future as not being able to be progressed. But I've heard what's been said tonight, particularly I think from Sue, that sort of said it does need to consider more connections beyond the township. You know, certainly I think there is a need to be connected to Diamond Creek. Diamond Creek is where the services are, the medical services are. There's if Wattle Glen's going to continue to be a tiny town, it has to be connected to Diamond Creek and further afield. You know, primarily it's got as good a public transport as Diamond Creek. You know, it's got, well, certainly in terms of the train, it's got at least one bus route that goes up through to Hurstbridge. So the public transport isn't too bad. Certainly the train services are as good as Diamond Creek, I believe. But there's an issue in pedestrians trying to get there. The only safe way to get to the train station currently is to drive. We talked about, you know, the issues around car parking and our car dependency. Well, you know, Wattle Glen displays that immaculately, that you can't safely get to the train station unless you drive a car and park there. And the same could be said for the Diamond Creek Trail, although there's not really anywhere to park. So the connections from the Diamond Creek Trail are strong, you know, at either ends of it, Hurstbridge and Diamond Creek and Eltham, I think. But yeah, certainly the connections at Wattle Glen and, you know, in between the Diamond Creek Activity Centre and you know, further north are very, very limited. So I think there's a whole heap of work to be done in this area, and I think that council also needs to look at what it can do. You know, rather than just sort of having this very, very high-level document that sort of says, oh, we're constrained by the state government, we can't go into too much detail. What can council do, you know, for Wattle Glen? There's certainly been stuff done in other areas. I know, you know, Panton Hill, St Andrews, Hurstbridge, you know, all public realm, was all stuff that was really driven by council, and we weren't in the past being beholden to the state government, not being able to sort of talk about plans because, it's their land. There is certainly stuff that can happen, I would argue, in Wattle Glen that need not necessarily involve the state government to the extent we're concerned about. So I think, it's a bigger picture of the framework, and there's a lot of work to be done with the state government departments into the future, but I think we also have to look internally and see how the public realm can be improved. And I'm out of time again. So sorry, I'll put the motion to the vote. Councillors, all those in favour? It's unanimous. That one's passed. That's it for the Planning Committee. We'll now roll into the Consultation Committee, and Councillor Duffy's the chair of that. So we'll just be a minute and we'll just swap chairs.
Thank you, Councillor Perkins, and thank you to those in the gallery who've come tonight. I know it's a long night. We're looking at the clock and it's now 5 to 10. So there's 2 more items to go tonight. Thank you. And we do have a couple of stayers, so thank you to those who've popped in at 5 to 10 and to those who are continuing to stay in the gallery. So yes, we do have 2 items in this meeting. The Planning Consultation Committee meeting is split into 2 forums. There's the planning part that Councillor Perkins has just managed, and now we're going to the other areas of consultation for matters that the Council has asked the community to comment on. So the first one of those is about the naming proposal for Civic Drive Precinct Park, and I will just call on the speakers. Thank you for that. Thank you. So the first speaker, we have 2 speakers, Svetlana. And I'm going to ask you, Svetlana, if you can pronounce your surname for me, because I know that I would get it wrong and I don't want to do that. Thank you. Thank you.
As a president of Friends of Apollo Parkways, I would like to address the committee and just declare that we strongly support the name Kirip Park for the area known as Civic Drive Precinct Park. Since 2007, our group has advocated for the retention of public open space and rezoning of the land in Civic Drive to public park and recreation zone. Giving our community hub the name that means friend in Woiwurrung language emphasizes the values of friendship, community involvement, and connection to the land. During the development of the Civic Drive Precinct Master Plan, planners and consultants pointed out the current lack of signage and importance of wayfinding information. Friends of Apollo Parkways request signage with the name of the park be installed following the decision. Given the number of visitors to all parts of the precinct and its expansive area, the park needs additional signage with directional information, such as pictorial maps and signs that literally point to where things are. These wayfinding signs will inform and assist people to navigate the area. For example, locating the Diamond Valley Library or fitness stations from the playground. Unfortunately, during the expansion of Diamond Valley Sports and Fitness Centre, the builders misplaced a sturdy large panel that had the rain garden diagram with an explanation of how the garden works and its benefits for the environment. We strongly recommend that the rain garden sign is remade and included in the comprehensive signage around Kirip Park. That's all I have to say on behalf of Friends of Apollo Parkways. And good on you on following it through. We really love the name.
Thank you very much, Svetlana. I'll just see if there are any councillors that have questions for you. Councillor Perkins.
Svetlana, I'd love to help you out once again and try to get this this sign remade. What sort of condition was it in when it was taken down?
It was well made. It was similar to what you've got at the front of the Shire offices, and it just pictured rain garden, explained how it filters the water, how it feeds into, drainage, and everything was good. But then we had this expansion. Then we ended up with some leftover materials just left on the land, like big poles. They're available. I don't know why they left them behind. But the sign was gone. And I think with our planting around it, we obtained some funding from Northeast Link project for expansion of the garden. With some sign, it will be even better, I think. If you're going to do any signs, I mean, why not to own what you've got? Good things need to be acknowledged.
Do you have any more questions? No.
Oh, good.
Thank you. Councillors? No, that's it. Thank you very much, Svetlana. The next speaker is Grant Brooker. Grant, would you like to come and take the microphone?
And you'd get some stick from you, Peter. Okay. Look, given the number of submissions and the content of some of them, the trite saying, what's in a name, seems to miss the mark. That's because a name is more than a label. It's a welcome mat to the story of a place. The opening line to a conversation. I will make the point up front. Civic Drive is a road. It is not the name of the public open space, thankfully rezoned to a park in Greensborough. Bad things can happen to you if you are anonymous, and very bad things almost happened to this park in 2008 and 2021. A name turns a pin on a Google map search into something real and hints at a theme. It transforms that anonymous dot into a place with its own unique character. A name is saying, here I am. I have something to show you. I have something that you will remember me by. This has been a long, arduous process. And I just want to briefly, some context for councillors. Originally, the name Apollo Parklands was rejected by Geographic Names Victoria as apparently one of the linear parks on the Banyule side of Apollo Parkways is called Apollo Parklands, or there's no signage identifying that in the area. The Diamond Snake Park was put forward with a rationale that it was a name that was commonly used by locals and it had become the de facto name for locals meeting people, although at times it was sometimes abbreviated to meeting at the Snake Park. This name was rejected by Geographic Names Victoria on the grounds that would create confusion if emergency services had a call out to the area with the Diamond Valley Sports and Fitness Centre and the Diamond Valley Library being in close proximity. Some preliminary approaches to the Wurundjeri Cultural Heritage Corporation indicated the name the Rainbow Snake Park wouldn't be acceptable as the rainbow serpent snake was a Northern Territory story rather than a local Wurundjeri one. The name Coinda Park was actually not welcomed by some council officers as although it was within, it was outside the 5 kilometre range from that is given by Geographic Names Victoria, there is a Coinda Park in Eltham. Coinda Park meaning a happy place. And so every long journey does result in a wonderful destination. And you have now Currit Park, the Wurundjeri word for friends, and that is synonymous with meeting people, sharing times together, all the things we like to do in parks. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Grant. Councillors, do we have any questions? Councillor Perkins, thank you.
Grant, how long have you lived in Apollo Parkways?
27 years.
And how long have you been a citizen of Nillumbik?
Oh, a citizen of?
A citizen of Australia.
Oh, I think around 30 years now. No, slightly less than that, but you were the mayor that gave me my citizenship certificate, Councillor Perkins, and that was a very memorable day, I think, for me, but possibly for you as well.
Yeah, probably about 2012, so 13 is about the right answer.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. It was less than I thought, but yeah, I still remember that day very clearly, as I think most new citizens do.
That's right, and we have a citizenship ceremony coming up shortly.
Okay.
Any other questions from other councillors?
I think I'm feeling like
Oh, sorry,
the guy
there is
from
more.
Waterloo Green here for a moment.
Sorry.
Grant or Mr Brooker. Grant, you must be very happy with the improvements that council has made, in the last 15 years or so to this area around Civic Drive.
That's an interesting question. When you go back to 2008 and, the slope that was just, unused and, it is a transformation now. It really is. And that's, thanks to the council. They've got the investment from the state government that made their own investments. And it's just one of these things, small things can have disproportionate dividends. The latest things, I think, which have been the mural, thank you, Jim, and the park benches and the seats. Little things, big dividends. Thanks, Peter.
Did you did I hear that you got attracted some state government funding for the park yourself?
Yes, Friends of Apollo Parkways were an applicant to the North East Link Community Fund for the fitness stations you see there now. It was $82,000 that we worked with council and coordinated the installation and of those pieces of equipment. So they've been there a month or so now. Hopefully it's winter time. I think they'll get a bit more usage in the summertime. But the drinking tap's there, so and the Indigenous garden that Svetlana mentioned. So little things, big dividends. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions? I've got one for you, Grant. I would just like to say the word Kirrup with the other names that have been put forward, and knowing that this actually came from the Friends of Apollo Parkways as a suggestion to have a naming for this place. Are you happy with the name Kirrup?
Yes. We think it is synonymous with the place. We think it is an excellent name. And it's interesting to me that the next item on your list is the Nillumbik Reconciliation Plan, when you had a look at some of the submissions that accompanied the name of Kirrup Park tonight. I noticed none of those people fronted this meeting tonight to talk about their submissions. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Well, that's all of the submitters that we have tonight. As there was a range of opinion in the submissions that we received from the public, I might just call for a motion at this stage. Thank you, Councillor Perkins.
Thank you. I move that the committee acting under delegation from Council 1 acknowledges and notes the submissions received on the following naming proposals as required under Section 7 of the Naming Rules for Places in Victoria to 2022, the naming rules, and Council's community engagement policy. A, the entire Civic Drive precinct, in brackets park, to be named Kirrup Park. Not renamed Kirrup Park, just named Kirrup Park. The building within the Civic Drive precinct park to be named Kirrup Pavilion. The outdoor performance area within the Civic Drive Precinct Park area to be named the Kirrup Outdoor Performance Space. The playground within the Civic Drive Precinct Park area to be named Kirrup Play Space. The exercise flat open space within the Civic Drive Precinct to be named Kirrup Recreation Space, as shown in Attachment 1. 2, acknowledges and notes the submissions received from the community in Attachment 2 and Attachment 3, and any verbal presentations made to the committee on the naming proposal for the Civic Drive Precinct and other assets in the park. 3, requests that a further report be presented to Council on 27th of August 2024, Council meeting to consider naming Civic Drive Precinct Kirrup Park and other areas within the park. 4, thanks submitters for providing Council with feedback on the naming proposal. 5, resolves the confidential unredacted copy of the written submissions to the naming proposal as per Attachment 3 remain confidential on the grounds specified in the definition of confidential information in Section 3(1)(f) of the Local Government Act 2020.
Happy to second, Councillor Duffy.
Thank you, Councillor Egan. You jumped in before I could say it. So wonderful. Councillor Perkins, would you like to speak to the matter?
I'd love to. Thank you. Look, we're truly blessed tonight to be in the presence of what I would call
royalty.
Apollo Parkways royalty. Every locale in Nillumbik has its local heroes. Eltham has several. Diamond Creek, perhaps only one, but certainly, to in Apollo Parkways, you know, I've seen what you guys have done over many years, you know, even before I got on council. It's been impressive. As you know, I grew up in Apollo Parkways. It's now Banyule, and it's a place that's always been close to my heart because that's, you know, where you revert back to your childhood memories. And, you know, it was good back then. It's better even now. And I think your work to stop it from being carved up, to being turned into, you know, what would definitely by now be medium density housing. And you know, I think this whole process in terms of, and including naming it as a park and rezoning and all the things that you guys have advocated for successfully, I think will protect it into the future as a park. And that's what it's all about. It's not about the name itself in my mind. You know, there certainly was, I saw what was happening on Facebook, a call to arms from the, you know, the hard right, as I call them, in parts of the Shire, well removed from Apollo Parkways, who had issues with naming it Kirrip because it was a Wurundjeri name. They ran off on a tangent, you know, suggesting that we were running off renaming all the parks, or, you know, there was even discussion about potentially, you know, renaming streets, you know, like James Cook Drive, and there was some real nonsense on Facebook. But I think some of that accounts for some of the submissions, you know, as Grant said, the unnamed submissions, people that just, you know, keyboard warriors that get onto Facebook and oppose something that they've got no connection to and know very little about. So I'm very, very happy that the Friends of Apollo Parkways are comfortable with this naming. If you weren't, I wouldn't be. So I'm very happy to move this motion. There's more to be done, of course, but I think, you know, former Councillor Brooker, you know, we had another former councillor here, Anika Van Helsen, you know, still working very, very actively in the community. And, you know, full power to your arm. I think it's impressive that not only what you did on council was significant, but you continue to work for your local community, and that's what we really need in local government. So I think this is a fantastic roundout to what's been done over many years for this Civic Drive precinct, and I look forward to further improvements into the future. Thank you.
Councillor Egan.
Thank you, Councillor Perkins. I'll continue with the brotherly love theme and welcome you to start, you know, congratulations on starting your campaign in a council meeting, Grant, because I think that's a first since I announced my running early 2016 in a council meeting.
Point of order.
Well done.
Point of
well
order.
done.
This is not a campaign meeting. This is a council meeting.
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, I will get to the point. Well done, both of you, and thank you, Svetlana. It's lovely to see you back again too, and thank you both for your submissions. It's actually a nice change to have some submitters actually not have a go at council, rather they're actually quite happy with what's proposed. And I think you hit the nail on the head with the hard right, as Councillor Perkins mentioned. I don't look at social media anymore, so I actually wasn't aware that was going on till he told me. So I'm glad to see that you concur with the name. I think it's a great name. And I think that combined in what we did in the last council too, and I remember when Councillor Perkins and I, when we were saving that derelict building that some councillors wanted to remove, the whole area here around the council offices has been sort of fought over and wrangled over, from housing complexes to open space to sports stadiums to the naming. And this is sort of like the final piece in the puzzle, really, because it sort of crowns it and names it and actually turns it into a place. So it's been I'm trying to think how many years it's probably been from where to go, probably 4 council terms, Councillor Perkins. But so it's great to see it's finally come to fruition and we can actually finally have a name and a sign and get it all done. So well done to the pair of you and the whole team at Apollo Parkway. It's a great job. Totally in support of the motion.
Thank you. Any other councillors wishing to speak? Thank you, Councillor Stockman.
Yeah, thanks for your submissions, and I will be supporting the motion as well. just looked at those numbers and I thought 153 to 86, they were a little bit closer than they would like to be for such a good thing that everyone's celebrating. But just wanted to touch in on the community, and it's a very local, passionate community here that stands up for their local area, and I think a lot of other communities can learn the same way, and well done.
Thank you, Councillor Stockman. Anybody else? No? Okay. I would like to say a few words. I'd firstly like to congratulate the Friends of Apollo Parkway. This is a wonderful community initiative to give an unnamed place a name, and a name with heart, a name with meaning. So yes, I do acknowledge both of the comments that you've made, Svetlana and Grant, in speaking with us today. I think Kirrip is a fabulous name for this location. I'm all for acknowledging the Wurundjeri history of this place. And I did find it quite offensive, some of the comments that people put into their submissions as to why they rejected this name. Some people called it creepy, etc. For me, that just goes to ignorance. And part of our job as people in this community is to educate, to celebrate, and to help people understand. So Uncle Bill Nicholson, a senior Wurundjeri elder, recently gave a presentation, a smoking ceremony at St Helena Secondary College. When he was addressing those students, he spoke in language. He used the word Kirrip. He also used in language the words unity and community, which I will not attempt to say. But, from a Wurundjeri perspective, unity and community comes from friendship, the hand of friendship. So what a wonderful place to be calling this area outside the council area, outside the basketball centre, outside the homes where new people are living, outside the school, civic, instead of civic drive, calling it Kirrip Park. So I commend you as a community group for bringing this to council as your initiative, and I would like to see more of this happen in the Shire. And for those people who say this is a waste of ratepayer money, really, we have $62 million worth of rates collected from Wurundjeri land. The least we can do is identify some parts of this Shire and restore Wurundjeri language and names to those places. So when we look in the papers here that it costs $350 to name a place like this for the translation, and then possible $3,500 for the duration of time for us to call this park Kirrip Park, I think it's the least that we can do. And it embarrasses me that in this day and age we have people who are so negative about the Aboriginal past and present and what can be a wonderful future in this Shire. So thank you to the community for bringing this to council so that this great work can happen, and for those people who are of First Nations origin, that they can feel proud and supported by the people in our community and the actions of council in giving this a name. We all have Federation Square has a name, Circular Quay has a name. For many people in the community, Uluru has a very strong name, and for those who remember what it used to be called, that's the past, there is a future, but before this time there was a very ancient past, 65,000 years. So I think Kirrip Park is an appropriate name, and thank you for bringing that to the community. We might call this to a vote now. All in favour? So that's carried unanimously. Thank you. The last item, actually it's not last, we've got two more to go, but the next item on the list today is the Reconciliation Action Plan. We don't have any speakers for the Reconciliation Action Plan, so I won't call anybody to the microphone, but I will look to a councillor to see if there's somebody who is willing to move this motion.
I can do that, Councillor Duffy.
Thank you, Councillor Eyre. And do we have a... I'll get you to read out the motion. Thank you.
That the committee, acting under the delegation from Council 1, acknowledges and notes the submissions received on the draft RAP presented in the Community Engagement Findings Report, Attachment 2, and in the Public Submission Report, Attachment 3. 2, resolves that the confidential, unredacted public submissions on the draft RAP in Attachment 4 remains confidential in accordance with Sections 3(1) of the Local Government Act 2020, and 3, acknowledges any presentations to the committee. 4, considers the matter contained in the submissions and this report during finalisation of the draft RAP. Oh, there's more. 5, requests a further report to be presented at the 27th of August 2024 Council meeting to adopt the final version of the Reconciliation Action Plan for submission to Reconciliation Australia. 6, thanks to submitters for providing Council with feedback on this important document. 7, notes the artwork in attachment 5 that will be incorporated into the final designed version of the RAP.
Thank you, Councillor Eyre. Do we have a seconder tonight? Thank you. Councillor Ramtran. Councillor Eyre, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Chair. So this draft Reflect RAP, or Reconciliation Action Plan, has got to this point in consultation with the RAP Working Group, Uncle Joel, Corporate Development Manager at Mob Jobs, Wurundjeri Corporation, and of course our community and council. Something I'm looking forward to also is the employment of an Aboriginal Partnerships Officer who will help support and guide the delivery of this plan. For those of you who aren't aware, a RAP, or Reconciliation Action Plan, is a formal commitment to support First Nations people's rights, culture, heritage needs and aspirations. A Reflect RAP has a 12-month lifespan and outlines steps to prepare council for reconciliation initiatives in the future, in future RAPs. And we're already on that journey, but this just formalises that for us. It will outline the shared approach council would take to progress reconciliation and work along First Nations people in all council services. And it has been many, many, many years in the making. I know it's been talked about for many years, and I'm just so proud and pleased that it's come during my term on council. The RAP working group was established with 16 members, including Wurundjeri traditional owners, First Nations community members and key stakeholders from across council and Nillumbik to help oversee its development. We received 16 formal submissions. It was recommended that council ensures that the RAP actions are spread across different council units to achieve a whole of council reconciliation approach, and I full-heartedly support business as usual across all departments and teams at council to deliver this. As mentioned in the recommendation, the artwork for this draft RAP is titled Kulin Nation Dreaming and has been approved for use by Wurundjeri elders, and it looks absolutely amazing, so I'm really pleased to see that go on our Reflect RAP. Thanks to all who've been involved in bringing our Reflect RAP to fruition, and in particular council officers and those who have provided feedback, our community and key stakeholders, and of course councillors for also championing it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Eyre. Councillor Ramtran.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And look, I'll keep it short. It's getting late and some may have noticed that I've started yawning, which is no reflection on the Reconciliation Action Plan. In fact, I'm incredibly excited that we've finally reached this stage. And it makes me incredibly proud, as Councillor Eyre said as well, incredibly proud to be on the council where we're starting this journey. We do have a long history of reconciliation here in Nillumbik, some wonderful things that have been done by previous councils, but there's so much more to do, and this Reflect RAP is about starting our reconciliation journey from today, reflecting on how we can do things better and beginning that journey alongside Wurundjeri people to work towards reconciliation. And it's so important that we do that now more than ever, and that we continue this journey. We don't let anything set us back or stop us. We have to continue on this journey, and that's what we will do. So I'm very, very happy to see all the feedback that we've received from the community. We didn't have any speakers tonight, but we have had a lot of really valuable input from the community and also from local Wurundjeri people as well. And so thank you to everybody for helping us to guide us to this stage, and I'm looking forward to endorsing the Reconciliation Action Plan on the 27th of August. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ramtran. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak? What I might do, just looking at the time, is just see if we could have a motion to possibly extend as we're getting close to 10:30. There are a few more things to go. So is there a procedural motion that someone could put forward to extend the time for tonight?
I can do that.
Thank you, Councillor Eyre. So that procedural motion would be to extend the meeting to go, to go past 10:30. Yeah.
Yes, I'm happy to recommend that we can go past 10:30 to continue our meeting.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Perkins. Can we just see a show of hands? All in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you, Councillor Egan. I can see your hand there too. Okay, so Councillor Egan, is there anything that you'd like to say? I didn't look up before to see you. No, okay, thank you. I would just like to say that I'm pleased to see that the draft reconciliation plan has got to this stage and that the community comment has been received. As Councillor Ramtran said, this isn't the beginning. This is part of a journey that council has had. Last year, there were 25 years of reconciliation in the Shire that was celebrated by the Nillumbik Reconciliation Group and the council. In putting forward a reconciliation action plan, I would like to see this be something that is embraced by all. I understand that this is something that does make some people nervous, and that there are comments from the community that have said that this is a waste of money, don't do this, etc. I won't go through all of the comments, but there are also a number of comments to say thank you and more or less to support us and say thank goodness that this is happening. So a reconciliation action plan, there are particular frameworks that Reconciliation Australia uses. So this first stage is a Reflect RAP, is a 1-year plan with action for those people who are worrying about why is it only for 1 year. I'd also like to acknowledge the artwork that is being designed to go into this RAP. Kinya Lurk, a First Nations business in Melbourne, artists Emma Bamblett and Megan Vandenberg are behind this design, and Megan Vandenberg is an Eltham First Nations woman. So I think that that's really appropriate for us to have First Nations people engaged in putting together the RAP and to doing the artwork to celebrate it. Just very quickly, I'd like to draw your attention to a section in the papers which talks about the RAP artwork description. The artwork description includes Bunjil and Wah at the top of the artwork, Bunjil the wedge-tailed eagle and Wah the crow, who are soaring and guiding through the skies. Bunjil is the ancestral creator and Wah the ancestral crow is the protector. The seasons are reflected, elders are reflected. There are 7 people that are in the artwork. The elders are represented and celebrated as the knowledge holders, giving guidance and passage down cultural knowledge and practices. There are footprints and there are trees. And the thing that's important here is with the footprints, there's talk about the acknowledgement of the journey of ancestors of the Kulin Nation, including Wurundjeri ancestor Barak and his 67-kilometre walk from Corandurk into Melbourne to give a petition to improve the conditions at Corandurk, where Megan's great-grandmother would later reside. So there is a long history that we should all know about, and these are stories that most people in our Shire don't know about. The other thing in terms of Barak, we were just talking about names. William Barak was the last Narrangator of the Wurundjeri people. The anniversary of his death is happening on the 15th of August, and we have, as a council, a place named that was converted from an artichoke farm to now Barak bushlands down in Eltham, and that's been revegetated. So there is lots of great things that happen with acknowledging First Nations people. So I will leave it at this, put this to the vote, and know that this will be coming to council at a later stage. So I'll just call them for a vote. All those in favour? And that's unanimous. Thank you. We'll move on to the last item for tonight. And the last item is the proposed roads deviation, part of Simpsons Road and Ridge Road at Christmas Hills. And I'll just call for somebody to move that. Thank you, Councillor Ramtran.
Yes, thank you, Chair, as per the papers.
And do we have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Egan. We have no written submissions on this item. We've got nobody wanting to speak about it tonight, so I might go straight to you, Councillor Ramtran, to speak to the matter.
Yes, thank you, and I'll keep it very short. And do you know what? We might just finish before 10:30. This is a very bureaucratic thing. We are not moving the road. All we're doing is moving a line on the map. If we didn't move the line on the map, we would have to move the road and all the land around it and cut down a load of trees, and then there'd be an old road there out of use and a new road that we'd have to construct. Nobody wants us to do that. So let's just move the line on the map and keep everything as it is and everyone's happy. Swap a little bit of land with Melbourne Water and no harm done. So that's what this is about. There's a statutory obligation for us to do consultation on it. We've done that. The process can move forwards. And that's all I have to say on that one. So we may well finish in time.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to speak? Councillor Egan? No, this is very much common sense. So let's put this straight to the vote. All those in favour? And that's unanimous. Thank you. And it is still 10:30. So with that, I'll call the meeting to a close. Oh, do we need to go through the... Sorry, got myself a little bit excited there. So we don't have any supplementary or urgent business. There are no confidential reports. And so now I will close the meeting at 10:31.
Sorry, Councillor Duffy.
Yes.
Just a point of order, and I'm not sure because I lost my power. Where were we with that petition?
There was no petition tonight.
So it's not coming up tonight.
So there's a petition, I think, coming to the next council meeting.
Right. So I lost track of all of that with my power outages.
Yes, that's understandable. It was pretty tricky. It was great that you've been able to zoom in, and fabulous that we've got the remote access for councillors and the community now.
Thank you. Good job,
With
Vince.
that, we'll close the meeting. Thank you, everybody, for your involvement tonight.
We didn't hear Jim speak.